What's up, man?
Yep.
Welcome to X1 episode 17, titled Happy Stanks-giving. Because if you're American, Thanksgiving is tomorrow.
We do all the eating, all the things, a lot of spending the following day. A lot of that.
I think I see Noah in chat. What's up, man? How was Worlds?
Oh, here we go.
He's probably typing a response right now. What do you got planned for tomorrow, man?
Woo! Well, for the past 6 years, I want to say, we just buy Thanksgiving dinner and make a couple of sides. So there's a restaurant down the street called El Camino, which is this great Tex-Mex place. It is in fact a phenomenal barbecue spot. They do smoked turkeys and all the fixings. So we just pick up one of those. I picked it up today. I'm heating it up tomorrow. We're good to go.
Easy.
I'll be making some mulled wine and some cocktails. I literally just baked cookies. It's gonna be great.
Sweet. We did a Friendsgiving last week on Friday, and I was asked if I could. Well, a call was put out. It was a bunch of people. It was like 30 of us, whatever. And a general call was put out that if for someone with a smoker, they'd be willing to smoke a turkey. And I was like, yeah, I have a smoker. And then before I committed, I looked it up just because I hadn't done it before. I looked it up to kind of see how involved it was. I was like, oh, this is easier than doing a brisket. So yeah, sure, I'll do it. Screw it. And then Cindy made stuffing. And when I was done making the turkey, it didn't take a long either. It took 3.5 hours, 4 hours. I was so upset because it was so much easier than cooking a turkey normally. I need you to understand, for the past, I think, except for when I was in the military and I was deployed. So for the past 13 out of 15 years, I have made the turkey and I've oven roasted it. And I smoked the turkey, and it was in an electric smoker, because I normally used in California, I have the wood burning thing because it would just I love doing the smoking in the winter with because I loved getting up before everyone else. My dog's runs out into the snow, I got coffee going, I'm starting the fire and stuff like that. It's just quiet with the powdery snow up in the woods and stuff like that. But now that I live down South Florida, I don't really have that anymore, and I don't really want to go outside more than I have to, so I have the electric smoker with the remote sensors and everything like that because I don't want to go out there. But yeah, it was really great, and just not having to have any of that mess in my house, because turkeys are messy. They produce such juices and smells, and there's all this paraphernalia and everything. So, and then tomorrow, Cindy, myself, and a couple of friends were running a 5K in the morning. Yes, we're those people. And then we're going to. I have a small 8-pound turkey because we're going to bring over. It's going to be myself, Cindy, my dad, and then our neighbor who he lives by himself. He's 90 years old. We try to have dinner with him once a week or every other week because his girls are busy. Well, his girls, they're grown, not girls. They're both grown, but they live up to DC, but they're very busy. So we try to go have dinner with him every other week or something like that, just so he has someone. And so we invited him over. So I got a little 8-pound butterball, and I'm gonna smoke it up again. We're gonna have some yams, some potatoes, just a small little thing.
Yeah.
So no, I didn't put bacon on the turkey, but I can totally do that tomorrow. Wouldn't be a bad call.
We've always fit. Bacon's a quick fix. There's a quick fix there.
Yeah, bacon's easy.
That's cool. It's cool to be able to post.
So what have you been up to the past month, man? It's been a month. You missed one bi-weekly show. I thought about kind of intruding on Under the Matrix this week, but I was like, no, because then we have to screw it up again to get back on track.
Let Enter the Matrix ride. That show's so good. What have I been up to? A lot of hobby, man. A lot of hobby. I've got, if you're in the Discord, you've seen I've been doing a bunch of custom little tinkering situations with these rampagers. Got 2 of them fully done. All the carnivores are done. Hold on. Let me bust out my pride and joy here. This guy
Yeah.
Running forward, fully posed. All of
I
this
love
shit is magnetized. All of it. Because I'm a total crazy person. If you're listening to this on the podcast, you should hit the YouTube because I'm showing off my very cool converted up night rampage running at full speed. Who's magnetized in 20 different spots so I can transport him safely. Yo, the chaos, I've never really had the full experience of the chaos spikes because I've done demons and like legit.
You poked yourself yet?
Like 4 times, like bleeding in 2 places. I'm like, the fuck is going on here? It's like, oh, that's not just a meme. That's like a real thing. All right, cool.
No, that's how the chaos forces get you. Like every time it's a little prick, it's like 0.01% of your soul, you know,
Just
and then like
touch more.
They get you eventually. Like right where the shoulder pads are, the spikes that go out horizontally, like those are the sharpest ones.
Yeah,
those ones get you good.
And then I'm like crazy, so everyone was just like, no, I need the spikes to like come out and like it has to match this way, and like these chains need to go here. So I'm like interacting with them probably more than like a normal person would be. So yeah, a lot of pokes.
I built several Slanesh chariots, and yeah, it is it's an experience. The axle, like where all those things are like different pieces, wasn't as bad as I expected it to be. It was tedious, but I would not build Slanesh chariots for fun as pastime. I have a bunch of them unassembled in a box. I have like 5 or 6 of them unassembled in a box. From when I was quickly buying up as many combat patrols as not combat patrols, start collecting from 8th edition as I could before they went out of print.
Yeah.
So I have a ton of those in my drawer. Those were good, right? Well, that's how I started my demon army. Like besides the big stuff, I built almost all my I built my entire Chaos Demon collection from combat patrols and start collectings, and then like limited run box sets, stuff like that. So.
Word. So yeah, doing that. So those guys are done. I've been trying to figure out how to speed paint all the Marines I've got that are assembled but not painted. So I've been messing around with this like Raptors method that I think I've got down, where it's just going to be like 3 cans of spray paint, a streaking grime wash, pin wash of burnt umber, and then I'm probably going to do up some like sponge weathering, and then call it, like base it and call it. And I think that I could probably pump out like 60 models that way in about 2 hours a day.
Oh yeah,
would look good. So that I'm pretty excited about. Been trying to get into Horus Heresy. There's a league at my store opening up. I'll share more about like what that experience has been like so far.
We're gonna carve out like an entire like 10 minutes section where you can just rant, where you just go in a soapbox and you just go nuts.
Yeah, man.
When you were telling me this story, I was like, man, this is peak Horus Heresy. Like,
man, and then I was like, maybe it's just different. And then you go to the Reddit and you're like, wow, legit the rules and recommendations for new players are themselves like fucking gatekeepy and totally inconsistent. So.
I think they almost do it as like a lightning rod, because they're kind of like, well, maybe if we just like build a point of failure for like the type of for the hobby, then like it'll suck away like it away from like the other game systems. I don't know. That's my theory.
Yeah, it's I've never more explicitly seen the vibe of like, no, we're keeping it casual, and keeping it casual means no, I want to win with whatever random stuff I feel like making. Period. Like versus like actually casual, which is like the vibe of the game feels good regardless of the outcome and what's happening. It's just different.
We need to both bring bad lists, but I want you to bring a slightly worse list than me.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Yeah. Anyway.
Just say that, dude.
Just say out loud. It's cool. You can live that way. Then like work's been crazy, but less crazy than it has been past. We finally made this higher, so I don't have to do 2 jobs anymore. Kids are good. Things are good.
Sweet.
How about you, Tim?
Won my first GT.
Let's go.
That's been a monkey on my back for a long time.
X and 0.
Yeah, I've had many like near misses, close calls, stuff like that. So finally got it. It was a smaller one. One of our teammates like volunteered to be the TO to put this together and everything. And so usually our store runs like about two GTs a year and then like an RTT every year. And so a little bit of backstory. We regularly put up like 35, 40-person RTTs because we've had a whole huge influx of new players, 10th edition, and they love the match. Enormous. So they love the match play experience. They really like it, and I see them in there all the time. They're grinding. They're like every Tuesday and Saturday. That's our Warhammer nights at our store, and like it's just always packed, and they're always grinding and testing and grinding. It's really cool. But like we can never like really convert over the GTs. You know, like in 9th edition, we were putting up some decent numbers for GTs, but like in 10th edition, our GTs have been like 30. 31, you know, but like our RTs are like 40, 45, you know, like I think our record's like 47. It's like, what are we doing, man?
47.
We did some exit surveys, and a lot of them were kind of like, you know, they didn't really want to like commit to 2 days. They were worried that like a GT would be a little more cutthroat, which is not at all. And then they were also like, they're like worried about the ticket cost, you know, that kind of stuff. So we basically decided to do an Ironman GT, which is something that used to be really popular in Florida. And so we thought about trying to like kind of like maybe like bring it back, where you do 5 rounds in one day. It's great for people like me who work on the weekend, and so you only have to really take like one personal day or one you know, one day of paid time off or whatever, and you come in, you bang it out, and then you're done. And so we basically did we played 2-hour 45-minute rounds instead of 3-hour rounds. Lunch was a little bit shorter, but we also provided pizza and soda like at the on site for all the players. We cut the cost down. Instead of doing our traditional raffle that we do at the end, where you get a ticket for list submission and then you get a timely list submission and a ticket for every loss you take. Instead, we just assigned everyone a number as they walk through the door. And in round 3, we basically picked numbers out of the hat while people were playing, and we came up to them. We like gave them door prizes, you know. So that way, and then like the dinner break was like 20 minutes, you know. Like just it was kind of like, hey, traffic. There's no traffic, you know, because it's late at night. Go out, grab something real quick, come back, that sort of thing. We're like, I was done by like 11:30, so it wasn't rolled dice at 8:30, done 11:30, but I finished my last game pretty quick, so it wasn't that bad.
Yeah. That's funny. Tim is quite humble, so he won't elaborate with the full details. But one of his first GT at an Ironman, so we're running 5 rounds back to back, no rest, as he pounds a monster. With Death Guard, right? While scamming himself of the death, a bit out of the Death Guard rules. It's pretty great, man.
Yeah, I actually played I played all the heavy plague weapons, so strength 6 instead of strength 8.
It's such a joke.
Whoops.
I love it.
I mean, the army's like made of lethal hits, so it wasn't like too bad, you know. Yeah. And then my game 4 against Ruben, which was my hardest game, we like realized that I actually played one rule that wrong in my favor, but then like I played several rules wrong against myself, so we're kind of like it ended up being like a wash.
Yeah.
And he was chill about it because we were both kind of just practicing for Warzone Atlanta, which I'm going up to next week. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, to run through, I guess that's a good segue into
let's talk the list. How does it work?
Okay, so the list. Let me actually. I'll pull it up, find it, put in my DMs, and then put it on a notepad or something like that, and then I'll share the screen. Here you go. Because obviously, like that night, like the next morning, several people were like kind of messaging me, asking me about this.
Love it. Love the GT
document. Yeah, it was really cool. Okay, so let me do share screen. Like my eyes are like looking all over the place. My monitor's huge. Present, share screen. There, boom. Okay, so that should be. Let me zoom in on that a little bit. That should be the list. It's pretty simple. So it looks nothing when you look at it, nothing there should really surprise you. All this should be stuff that, for the most part, that everyone's really seen, and there's a reason for that. I am very big on like wisdom of the crowds and crowdsourcing. There is so many events that are being played now in 10th edition compared to 9th and especially compared to 8th that it's very basically any given meta gets solved extremely fast, usually within about 4 weeks. And so as someone who barely has things have been kind of busy for me like crazy right now, a lot of times, like my practice, like one event for me is my practice for the next event, and usually I just try to string a bunch of events together and just keep that momentum going. But I needed a starting point, and I was kind of seeing like bits and bobs of stuff that was working, but I was like, okay, well, let me pull up a technique that I've used a long time ago, which is basically crowdsourcing pick rates and win rates. And so that's kind of where Frank got the inspiration from the dirt sheets from, because I would do this for a single faction, especially if I was trying to like learn a faction or like kind of crack it out or figure it. And like I just wanted like, boom, what's in winning list or almost winning list? Because if you're X and one, like a lot of times, like it might have been bad luck or you made like one mistake in a critical game or whatever, but like you totally were in a position to win that event, presumably. Especially if you've done it repeatedly. And so I can actually pull it up here. And let's see if I can share it in I have so many windows open right now.
For listeners, both on YouTube and podcast.
Yeah, this is
show notes
definitely go on YouTube. So over here, this is basically what I did leading up to it. Is I basically went, I just put first name only for privacy concerns because people are going to ask me about this and I was going to share it. And I basically went through every single list. I started with Max Weiss, who won, apologies if I mispronounced his name, but he was the first guy that won an event with Death Guard. So I was like, well, that's a good spot to start. It's relatively recent. The choices should be relevant. And I basically went from there and I worked backwards up to present time. By present time, that Tim at the end there, that's not me. That's a different Tim. So this was about a week prior to the event. And I basically went through and I listed everything that everyone would take. And then I basically just kind of tallied it up. And you can see I went, for Max here, I listed everything he took, Stefan, John, so on and so forth. And then once I had everything done, I basically would just kind of click on the column and I would make a note of the total value. And then I would go over here. I think there was like 17 lists or something like that. 17 lists of as of this sampling that won X and 1 or better. And so I went to sheet 2 and I basically I would go row by row. And so I would say, okay, well, every single list, well, all but one list took Plague Marines. Mm-hmm. So 16 lists, and I would divide the total count that you get. Excel and Google provide this for you. So you take the total count, you divide it by the number of lists, and you get the pick rate. And then you go by all those lists that took it, and you can actually average out the unit count. And I would just go do the next thing. So the Rhino, so I'd see basically for every 10 Plague Marines, you would have a Rhino. So they're basically essentially the same data sheet as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. Rounding count 3. No surprise, Nurgling. So these first 4 data sheets, pretty self-explanatory. The vast.
Just make up the core.
Yeah.
3 Rhinos, 3 Plagues, 3 Nurglings, 3 Plague Scrawlers. Money.
Same thing with the biologists. It's rounded to 2, but that's just because there was a handful of people that were kind of doing kind of weird stuff, and they would only take 1 or something like that. They would go more like sorcerers or chaos lords, or whatever. But for the most part, I rounded this down. Most people were really taking 3. And I basically went through this list, and by the time I waited till I was done because I took a lesson from Peter the Falcon, who is the grandfather of 40K stats from the 4th edition. And he always told me, don't try to be an analyst and a collector at the same time. Finish collecting, and then once you're done collecting, then go back and analyze. So I had my data set, and I basically just went through top and bottom. I was like, okay, well, here's my core. I'm already taking 3 Rhinos, so I might as well make this 6 Plague Marines. I basically count every 5 Plague Marines as a unit. That's how I came to this number. 3 Nurglings, 3 PPCs, 3 Biologists, Typhus. And that's kind of where I started when I wrote the list. And I was like, okay, this is pretty straightforward. And I played 3. I took Max List to an RTT. That was my first outing with Death Guard when I was kind of spooling up. I listened to his interview on Content Plus and his interview on the Disgustingly Resilient podcast to try to get in his head what he was doing. Ennis also linked me to his blog. He had a very good write-up article about Death Guard when he was switching to them from Eldar. And so between those three pieces of content, I was like really able to kind of like get into his head about what he was doing, what his general game plan was. And I actually asked him like some questions directly, and he responded about like 1 or 2 matchups. And so that was kind of cool. And then I also tried Liam VSL's list that he took to Worlds, and I played like games with that. I didn't love it as much, but I definitely saw like what he was doing with it. So I had 3 games with Max's list, 2 games with Liam's list, so that's 5 games. And I listened to 2 podcast interviews with Max, and then read his article, and then I also messaged Liam directly, and we did some back and forth about his list. And then that's when I created this sheet thing. And so basically, I preferred Max's list, and so after I had the core, I was like, okay, the Death Shroud, I really like those. As you can see here, it says 2 units, but I only have Typhus. I don't have a second character. So Typhus's rule when he attaches to a Death Shroud is he makes a -1 to hit in combat. Death Shroud's rule when they're led by a character is they're -1 to wound if the strength is higher than their toughness. So conceivably, you link them together and you have -1 to hit and -1 to wound, which can also stack with -1 to hit from Nurglings, -1 weapon skill, ballistic skill from your contagions, and then you can also pop -1 damage and you're a 2-up save as well.
Yeah. Suddenly you're like, oh, so hitting you on 6s, wounding on 4s, and you've got all
I mean, usually most people won't be hitting on 6s because you can only stack minuses to hit so far.
Right,
but if you were hitting on 3s, now you're hitting on 5s, like it'd be. So I saw the value. I was kind of like, well, before I was running some MSU with Max's list, but I really wanted some hammer units. So I stuck the 2 Death Shroud together. I was like, well, if I put Typhus with them, now I have a really efficient, durable unit that also like makes really good use of strats.
Yeah.
I hadn't messed with the drone yet, so I figured I'd just chuck a single drone in there to see how it was. I'd messed with the Foul Blight spawn from Liam's list, so I liked him. I didn't like 2, but I liked 1, so I threw him in there. And then at that point, that's where we start getting down to like the people who kind of like spun off and were doing like their own things, like onesies and twosies, like Mortarion 35% of list, Lord of Heroes 29%, Mythic Blade Haulers 24%, and this is clearly where we start like spinning off into like people like doing like individual concepts, whereas like at the top of this is like the core of like every single good list, like the tried and proven stuff. And so that is, let me go back and share the original. Stop screen, present. Share screen. It's got to be a fast way to do this. I'm sure there is. I'm just not very good at it.
No, you're good.
And that is how we came out with this list. I literally just took that process that I did and I created this. This list was almost entirely procedurally generated by that like Excel data sheet I made. So I wish I could say there was like a stroke of genius in here, but like literally I just crowdsourced. I was like, what is going X and 1 and better on a data sheet level, not on like a top-down list level, but like on a data sheet level, what is going X and 1 better? How often is it getting picked? And like what's the pick rate? And what's the average thing? And so I ended up with Typhus. Foul Blight spawn with the droning. I had 10 points left. It came up like once. And that's because I forgot I even had it most time. But it's like if you fail Battle Shock within contagion range, you take some extra mortals. Three biologists who, along with the Plague Marines, were the beating heart of the list. 4 units of 5 Plague Marines with the plasma, because I like the plasma, the launcher, because you kind of have to take a launcher because the way the units are constructed. 3 heavy weapons, a big hammer unit with 5 heavy weapons, 2 flamers, 3 plasma and a launcher, the 6 Terminators we talked about, the drone with the mower. The drone was good, the mower was trash. 712, and it's 10. I saw 10 attacks. I just got starstruck, But like 712 is such an awkward profile. If it was 622 or 8, if it was 622 or like 812, like that would have been fine. But 712 is just like not it. The breakpoints are all wrong. So he's still in the list because he's relatively fast. He's cheap. He's OC3. he's literally the same stat line as a Rhino, except he has a 5-up invuln. So he takes like real commitment to kill. And he can fall back, shoot, and charge, which means he can fall back in action. He can fall back, shoot somebody, charge again. Because a lot of times I just used him to do like homers or to tag like a tank that didn't want to get tagged or something like that. So when I changed this to the spewers, which are a anti-infantry 2-up, AP1 no cover, damage 1 gun, flamer. You get 2d6 anti-infantry 2-up flamers on that thing, so you can fall back, flamer, and then charge, like if you're trying to keep something tagged up, or you could charge something and then fall back deeper into your opponent's deployment on the next turn, then do homers into the deployment zone. So I really like that utility. And he's a good Overwatch target too.
What a great unit.
Yeah, he's great. I loved him. Like I said, just the mower wasn't it, but like the drone itself was good. I was like, okay, well, if I slam 2 of these anti-infantry 2 ignore cover flamers on here, like now we're cooking. 3 plague burst crawlers, 2 with the entropy cannons, which are like wish.com last cannons, and then 1 with the anti-infantry 2-up flamers. I was just really people ask me about this all the time. I was like, look, entropy cannons are trash, but there's 24 inches, strength 10, lethal hits, AP3, D6 plus 1 damage. Like, people don't really want to call your bluff too much on those because, like, if you just connect, then all of a sudden they're just like eating las cannons. Yeah, so they're mostly here just to keep people from standing out in the open. I don't want people getting stuff against me for free, and like that includes like standing in the open, you know. But I changed one of them to the flamers because people would put like storm boys in my backfield, pop +2 to charge, and then charge my home objective, or they were like fire and fade like hawks on my home objective, stuff like that, you know, because it is OC4 and it's big, but I just didn't like people putting nonsense. And we're back there and we were playing on GW terrain, and it's very hard to shoot backwards at your home objective once you pushed forward. And I don't want to waste indirect shooting backwards, you know, especially because I would have to fall back that plague burst crawler, which means that plague burst crawler can't shoot, which means that's 1/3 of my plague burst crawler is not shooting indirect. Yeah. So putting the flamers to threaten the Overwatch, and then if they still make the charge, if they survive some reason, now they have to take like a battle shot potentially, and then they get flamed in combat. Like it just seemed like a no-brainer to me, especially because he wasn't using the entropy cans while he was hiding behind a ruin on my home field objective. So I'm like, well, let's put flamers, easy. 3 rhinos. These guys actually were really good. The double plague combo bolters, when you get close, it's 8 shots with lethals. And then with the contagions making people -1 toughness, like it actually was like a pretty surprising break point at strength 4. So between the lethal hits and the contagions, like they were actually picking up a lot of trash, especially like near the end of the game. And then the Havoc launcher. And then 3 units of Nurglings, which gave me just tons of resources for pushing buttons, doing actions, move blocking, pushing stuff up with rhinos, and then with my plague marines inside. And then I would like have the rhinos like up against walls, and I'd put like Nurglings behind it. I'd be like, okay, well, if you want to punch the rhinos, you're -1 weapon skill, you're -1 to hit. If I really care, I'll make you -1 damage. And then a bunch of dudes are just going to spill out the back, and they're going to flame you and shoot you. And like one of them is going to have like fight first. It just created this whole like multi-layered problem for people. So that's the list top to bottom. People are not familiar with Death Guard. The big thing is that Biologist does 2 things. One, he lets you use the grenade stratagem if it has not been, even if it's been used in that phase, and it's once per game for each Biologist. So it's like a big combo where you use a Plague Marine squad with no characters attached to it, and you grenade with that unit for 1 CP, and then you grenade with every single Biologist for free. So it's realistically like 12 mortal wounds. Then Typhus comes in. On a 2-up, Typhus always does a super smite. Basically, it's D6 mortals on a 2-up. On a 6, it's D3 plus 3. So if you do that and then you shoot, my first RTT, I went 3-0, and I didn't realize you could shoot after grenades. So I was just like grenading people, but like not shooting. So I did not make that same mistake this time. So
damn it, I love it.
So I would Typhus smite people, I would grenade people, then I would shoot the crap out of them, then I would charge them. And then the other thing the Biologist does is he gives you an assault weapon, which lets the smaller units, advance an action. in addition to advanced shoot. Like, so they can advance to shoot or they can advance in action, which is really great because they move 8 inches out of Rhino. Now they move 8 plus D6 in the action, so it was really good for like action economy, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But he also gives the entire unit lethal 5s, which is huge. Not really, I don't really have rerolls in this army, but like lethal 5s is huge because there's a strat. Actually, he gives you the unit has lethal 5s on a lot of his stuff, but he gives you the criticals. And so when you pop the strat where you get exploding 6s, and so with him it's exploding 5s, and so and if it's on a unit that you stickied or an objective that you stickied, it's Tesla 5s.
Yeah.
So it's like a full combo with the template Marines where you pop, you already have lethal 5s, then you pop extra AP in all your weapons. So all your heavy weapons are AP3, and all your plague knives and close combat weapons are AP1. And like every dude that doesn't have a heavy weapon basically has like 4 strength 4 AP0 damage 1 attacks, which are now AP1. And pretty much all the stuff that's lethal is now lethal 5s, and then everything is like Tesla 5s.
Also Tesla,
you know,
yeah.
and it's just this 10-man unit just hits so hard. The death shrouds hit like kind of hard, but the 10 plague marine unit hits real hard. And then that's also the unit the foul blight spawn would go in. So whenever if you got close to them, in addition to being fight first, they would have 3 flamers that were ignore cover with some AP and then anti-infantry 2 up. And the foul blight spawn's gun was like AP 2 with like damage 2 or something like that. So his hit a little bit harder. So you just eat like the world's nastiest Overwatch, and then like whatever pieces of you are left, if you decide to still charge at that point, still commit, you would just lose it. So that behind the wall like created like a ton of problems for people.
Yeah, that's tough. It's like try to deal with it. You're like, okay, cool. That'll be 12. Just take this damage and then make approximately 15 saves at -2 AP. Good luck.
And then I like to call this the green triangle of doom, because this is what I did for almost every single game. I just did that.
This is so dirty.
So, like, I would literally just pick 3 objectives and I just covered it with my entire army. Now there was this picture was taken after 2 rhinos had been popped, so there was 3 rhinos up here. And usually the rhino with the 10-man dudes were kind of like a little bit further back. You had to be careful with them because like you want people to like kind of activation lock by shooting the rhinos or whatever. But if they push you too hard, like, and they forcibly disembark your guys from the rhino, and then push, you're not gonna be able to overwatch because your battle shots. You can't like use those stratagems. So I was definitely kind of figuring out that a part of this game was kind of really kind of figuring out, well, what do I think my opponent's going to do next turn based on like what the board state is and how many resources he has. Like if he has a lot of resources and he's like looking like he's going to gear it to push, as long as he doesn't have indirect or he doesn't have like a ton of mobility, then I would like disembark the 10-man unit and I'd put them into like a ruin or something like this. So that way if he tries to like come back here with like reserves or like something fast and peek the ruin, he eats it Overwatch. Or if he just charges through the wall, then he fights first, you know. But if they crack the rhino and then disembark, then like he doesn't have to worry about Overwatch at that point. So it was just like little things like that. But usually what I would do is I would push up with the 3 rhinos into the center. 1 to 2 plague burst crawlers and a unit of nurglings would kind of like be on my home objective, just kind of covering as much of the puck as possible. And then almost everything else, like another plague burst crawler, the drone, some nurglings would like kind of like push up to the top objective, try to set up. And then I would kind of just wait to see what my opponent did. I would usually take homers and something else. And then I would just try to indirect their trash off the board as fast as possible. And if they try to make a big play on like my plague marines, especially like my 10-man rhinos, if they try to set up like multiple shots plus charges to like crack a rhino and then charge whatever's in, I would rapid ingress the terminators to be like right where their commitment was to punish the commit. And that was generally kind of what I did. My secondaries were different every single game, but it was always it was homers 4 out of the 5 games, but it was a mix of stuff. One was homers and cleanse, one was assassinate and bring it down. A lot of them were like homers and a kill secondary. One of my games versus orcs, I did homers and storm hostile objective because I kind of figured there'd be a lot of objective flipping and no one would really be surviving on objectives. We'd basically just be flipping objectives over and over until one of us ran out of units. So I kind of took that as a bet hedge.
Yeah.
And that was really it.
Money. Tim, we got to get you on. You got to do the podcast parade now. You got to hit all the spots as an Ironman winner.
No, I don't know. I kind of like the low key thing because it was a small GT and it happened like while the World Champs of Warhammer was going on, so it was kind of nice. I mean, we had some like local sharks that were there, but like all like as we like to call them, all the megalodons were like up in Atlanta. So
love it.
But it was good. Yeah, it was like 15 hours of Warhammer, and it was good. My last game was hilarious because like the round 4 against Ruben was he pushed. I pushed up some rounds to see what he did, and he pushed up Mazrog and he pushed up Beast Boss with Head Wappas. And he tried to do the thing like where he double charge and like kill one thing with the Rhino, and then the other thing charges the contents. Yep. He did like 4 damage. He did like 4 damage to the Rhino. So that didn't work. So I disembarked my entire army, and I picked up Mazrog and the Beast Boss. Just picked them all up in shooting because I didn't really want him to fight on death. Yeah. And I didn't want to leave gas in the tank in the shooting phase and then try to charge him. And then like have that like not be enough, and I take damage. Like that would have probably been like game ending because he had a bunch of like Squig Hog boys. And I think like when I was moving my rhinos out of the way, I could have been a little bit cleaner. I could have set up like more move blocks or whatever because he got a little more Squig Hogs into me next turn I wanted to, but I was able to move block some of them with Nurglings. But like I got both of them, but I also really messed up the flash kits that turn because he had disembarked them, tried to take some shots at the Terminators. I think he killed 2, but then I picked up 8 flash kits with my return shooting, and then picked up Mazrog and the Beast Boss. But now my entire army was disembarked, and he had 18. Well, he had 9 Squig Hogs and a War Boss with 10 knobs with Power Claws, like coming in hot. So I was kind of like, clenching cheeks a little bit. And it was very bloody, but like after the water turn fell off, like I just had a lot of MSU units, and I just had like a lot of volume, like from the rhinos shooting, the plate burst crawlers were getting involved, stuff like that. The Terminators were slowly like pushing their way up the field, and eventually I was able to close them out. And I ended up winning that one by 3. Whereas the top table game was actually kind of like a gentleman's game where I set up the triangle, and he set up in the far corner. And he basically was just sitting on 2 every turn. I don't even remember. I think he went tactical. And I just took Cleanse and Homers. I set up the Triangle of Doom. And I just started like hitting the buttons on the secondaries as fast as I possibly could. And by turn 3, by the time he realized what was going on, I was up by like 35 points.
Yeah. Put him on a timer he didn't know about.
And he was like, oh fuck. And so then he like started to push.
Yeah.
He pushed everything through to kill like a Plague Burst Crawler. And he killed it, and the Incarn showed up, but I was -1 what skill bliss skill, and so the Incarn like attacked the other Plague Burst Crawler and like didn't just kind of bounced. And then the 10-man Plague Marine Brick came back. I spent all the CP on that unit and just picked the in combat only because I didn't shoot anything else that turn because I didn't want her to like escape my grasp.
Yep.
I just picked up the Incarn from full in combat with the 10-man Plague Marine Brick. I was like, whoop, you're out of here. And then I piled into the Hawks, and I was like, if you leave, you're going to get flamed harder than you've ever been flamered in your life. And then that was kind of it. And then that was it. I think I won. It was like 99-81 me. Like I didn't even try to stop his points. I just set up on a triangle and just did my own thing.
Yeah.
And and he pushed, he bounced, and then we ran out of time, basically. And we finished that game in like an hour.
That's awesome. Love it.
That was it, man.
I've got prep questions. So you played 3 games with one list that have been good, 2 games with another list that have been good, both piloted by like great players. And then did you play any practice games with the list that you were able to put together after your data analysis?
Nope.
Interesting. All right. So what did you think? What lessons did you pull out of like that first set of practice games with lists, Max Weiss's list? And then what did you pull out of the 2 games with Liam BSL's list?
So Max's list, I kind of like learned the power of MSU, and then Liam's list, I kind of like learned the power of hammer units. And so when that list kind of came together with the with like the data analysis pulling, I was kind of pleasantly surprised to see that it was kind of like I saw the opportunity to do a little bit of both. Yes.
Yeah.
So I had the raw material of like 30
Yeah.
Plague Marines and like 6 Death Shrouds, like stuff that the data was telling me to take, and
Yeah.
stuff that had kind of shown it up in like one or both lists. So it kind of almost like wrote itself, because like I said, I had one Terminator character, and Max's list, there's 3 Terminator characters. There was a Lord of Violence, a Lord of Contagion, and Typhus, which he then swapped to 2 Lords of Contagion, which I really like that change because it gives the Terminators full hit rerolls, makes them much more viable with the lethal hits. And that was the version I played at the RTT. But this one, I had 1 Terminator character and 6 Death Shroud, and all the bonuses that Typhus and the Death Shroud get are defensive in nature, so it just kind of made sense to kind of stick them together to get more value. Like, because like if you go pure MSU, yeah, it's pure MSU is really good. It's just sometimes like you don't really get that big red button of strat efficiency, and a lot of times you're like, oh, I want to spend the strats, but like this unit is small, so I'm not going to get as much efficiency out of it. And then the Liam was running the 10-man bricks with the Foul Blight Spawn and the Biologist. He was running a couple of them, and I liked it, but having so many, it kind of felt like there was a lot of situations where I needed to get Plague Marines out to do a job, but I didn't want to get out 10 Marines and 2 characters. Like it was like I had to take care of a small problem, but the only thing I had left to take care of it with was a big unit, and I didn't want to give my opponent that kind of value. So having that kind of like middle ground was really, really, really nice.
That's dope. Did you have how soon after playing those lists did you find yourself thinking like, okay, I think I have a sense of like what deployment's gonna look like, what turn 1's gonna look like, what turn 2 is likely to look like, and then be in a position to like start making more adaptive decisions from there on out?
It was within a week. I like basically my first game with Death Guard was like 2 weeks prior to this event. So it was basically I basically got a practice game with Liam's list, then I had the RTT with Max's list, and then I had another practice game with Liam's list, and then I showed up with this list. And I was actually just kind of just like I said, this was supposed to just be practice for Warzone Atlanta, but it ended up working well. So
that's awesome. And like just a really accessible path for someone who is X and 1 or looking to be X and 1 and do a little bit better to take, right? Like the data's all out there.
Yeah, that's
information's
I
out
say
there.
It all the time. Yeah, the like playtesting and trying to like figure stuff out and like it's fun. Like playing Warhammer is fun. Discovering new things is fun. Finding a new concept is fun. But there's like multiple ways to have fun. Like I just have fun playing a game. I don't care if I'm playing with someone else's lists. Like it's not a big thing. I don't really like think about like list owners. It's cool to be like say like you're the one to create a list, but like it's no one really cares. Like that Blade Runner. Like that Blade Runner quote, it's like, tears in the rain. It's just in a year, like no one's going to remember who wrote the list.
Yeah.
But so I basically just hyper focused on picking up what was proven to be good and then working on like matchups and like working on like those little things. Making sure that I knew the restriction, learning the rules, trying to like commit on to muscle memory and like learning the restrictions of the rules so you don't accidentally cheat. Because it's like nothing worse than finding out like you made like a huge swing in the game, and then like you kind of have to be like, okay, well, this really like changed the game, so now I'm just going to forfeit, or I'm going to flip the score, and now my run's over. It doesn't feel good. All that prep work for nothing. Or when you look at it, you're like, oh man, I can totally shoot after I do grenades. Like that sort of thing. A lot of the strategies for Death Guard, they have like an extra stipulation, like kind of like a second level if you're on an objective you control. And there's a couple situations I can think of where like 1 or 2 things like lived on a wound or 2, and like it ended up being fine. But if I just remembered those rules, it wouldn't have lived on a wound or 2. Like, and at that point, it's like a branching timeline where the rest of my game is much easier. So, but a lot of the prep work was, like I said, just consuming a little bit of content creation. And I saw some questions about this. I don't want to bury the lead, but I don't consume nearly as much content as I used to.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a saturation point where it actually starts hurting you. So to steal a phrase from Steve Trimble, he likes to keep his brain clean. I love that term. So
I love it.
When I was trying to learn this army, I basically pulled up Max's list, which was clearly was proven, and it seemed pretty straightforward and seemed like good stuff. And then I listened to a couple pieces of his content, asked him some questions I still had afterwards, and then that was it. I didn't listen to like any content, like podcasts or content or anything like that for like the next 2 weeks. I just, all my free time was like basically just like in the index data cards, like just reading the weapons and the profiles and the rules, and just really trying to like get an idea of like how this army plays on the table, how I think it's going to move on the table and deploy, and how it's just going to come together. So I was just laser focused on that. So instead of listening to podcasts and that kind of stuff, it was a lot of time on like Wikipedia and the index cards and just kind of just studying. It sounds lame, but like when I was at break at work or stuff like that, I would just be studying,
Yeah. Prepping for the exam, man. Finals are serious.
Yeah, man.
That's dope.
That was it.
I've been thinking about like sort of adjacent to mostly because I like really want to put custodians on the table and not make a total fool out of myself. Thinking about taking an adjacent approach where you see what's working for a similar list or a similar style or a similar faction, and see whether that's something you can explore in your own, if your own is just sort of like down in the dumps. Like looking at Anthony's World Eaters list and being like, okay, we've got some like Fights First access, we got Karn, we got decent CC, but it's really just character movement or character transports who are like actually doing a lot of heavy lifting, 8-pounder going crazy, you're doing a lot of objective work. And you're actually not playing hyper aggressive, you're playing much more of a like, be appropriately aggressive when threatened, but it's like a lot of counter punching,
Yeah, it's a little hard because custodians don't really do the transport game as well as
right.
So like a lot of the top armies out there right now is like CSM, Votan, Black Templars, World Eaters, Death Guard, all orcs. It's like all good stuff in transports, and that's because of the Night Spinner. The Night Spinner is single-handedly warping the meta. Custodians are deathly allergic to the dev wounds, and they don't like the idea of paying for transports. But I could be convinced to like test out like a Land Raider or like a Coronis or something like that. Is it ideal? No, but like when you get to like the kind of like the bottom quarter of the meta, like there's almost like a thermocline. There's 2 thermoclines when you look at like the meta dashboard.
Yeah.
There's the one where everyone flocks to your faction. And it's like a certain level where you just hit that critical mass, and now like it's just like moss to the flame. Everyone's jumping on your faction.
Yeah.
And then there's a second one where like basically everyone just jumps off.
Abandoned ship.
Like you'll have abandoned ship, just everyone, like even the most like diehard person, if they have multiple armies and they're trying to like win, like they'll finally just like give up and they'll just go move to something else. It's kind of like it's like the Scaries and the Sieglers of the world, like Drakari or Admech or Tal. When you see them jump off your faction, like it's time, man.
It's over.
And so, and so when you're below that second like thermocline, it's really hard because you have to kind of be like your own champion. Like you have to be like, why is this faction so bad? And like that's where you have to like really like think outside the box to like try to make it work. It's tough. It's tough work because now you're innovating because there's no one else.
Right. It's not like, oh, I'm going to find something that works as an alternative to what is currently working and popular. Like, nah, if I don't figure it out, it's just over. And will continue to be over for the near future. It's tough. Yeah, I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe like Alea with some sisters and a Rhino could do some of like really, really Wish.com Karn work, but not really. Maybe I just like rapid ingrace Terminators over the course of a couple turns. Like, I don't know. I was spiraling in a list the other day, just like, oh, this is so frustrating with lethal hits and how they work and our lack of cheap transports.
I could see like maybe a kind of thing where you're doing like what the Death Guard are doing, where it's just kind of like you pick 3 objectives and you form your triangle, and you're just taking stuff like cleanse and homers, and you're basically just being like, and you're just setting up defensive posture, and you're just trying to get to the board state where you lock in those 3 objectives as soon as possible. Because you know how like sometimes you start at the bottom corner and the one at the front is like the one that takes the most punishment.
Yep.
And it's the hardest to hold from a durability standpoint, but the one on the top left is the hardest to hold from a mobility standpoint, because it's usually kind of like the farthest one from your deployment zone that you're pushing up to. And then the other two objectives are like the ones where you're disrupting your opponent's score. So that's what I was doing with the Death Guard with like all the mech and everything. Because the first 2 turns of the game, like I'm actually kind of fast. The Plague Burst Crawlers move 10, the Drone moves 10, the Rhinos move 12. You know, like Nurglings infiltrate, Terminators are in deep strike, like setting up for rapid ingress. So the army's faster than it looks, or as fast as it needs to be. Because I'm only really playing like 2/3 of the board. I could see a world where you do something different, like or you do something similar. You know, like you have the Kyria Draxus, who I think like makes like can make a unit like Lone Op or something like that.
Right.
Lone Op similar, something like that. You know. Yeah, like and you're just doing stuff like Lone Op, and you're like layering in the fight first, and you know, and like maybe like you said, like maybe you take in like a Coronis or a Land Raider, just and like that one pushes to the top left objective, and it's kind of durable and kind of park there for a little bit, and then you have like Rhinos with Sisters are kind of pushing up to the front objective, and they're just trying to be like the initial holders until like your foot slogging troops can like get up there next to it, you know, something like that. I could see something like that potentially working, and you're basically just trying to get into the objectives first, and then you start setting up this like multi-convoluted like activation locking fight first kind of thing that's kind of high durability, you know. And then like
Overwatch you with the Sisters unit with 10 flamers, and if you try to charge it, then I hit you with this fights, but like it turns into a thing. But then it's all just like you're like working really hard to get to slightly above 50% overall win rate if I play this really well. Against a decent field, which is doable. But
yeah, the points are going to hurt. You know, the points hits that you took like are going to hurt because it sounds like you're going to do a lot of stuff to make that happen. But I could see like something like that totally working.
Yeah.
Cliff, my headphones are actually starting to die, so why don't we break this up? And we're going to change subject. I want you to monologue about your Horus Heresy kind of thing. While I'm gonna have to switch to the dork headset here in a second, so that's going to take me a couple minutes to do. And so while you do that, I want to hear you monologue about the Horus Heresy thing.
Got it. All right, viewers, listeners, come on a trip with me. So my local store, which I actually really like it's a good spot, it's a good place. Horus Heresy League is going to be starting out, and there's like a survey out in our Discord that was like, hey, what's going on? Here are the proposed rules, et cetera, et cetera. And like, as a Custodes fanboy, I was like, dope. Like, this is literally my favorite faction in the entire lore. I'd love to get involved with Horus Heresy. I don't know anything about that game at all. I've never played it, but like read a bunch of the background. I used like a bunch of Bad Ab War stuff from the last version of Horus Heresy as like picture inspiration for the way I'm doing these Raptors. Cool, I'm down. And start reading through the rules, and like one of the rules is the Custodes faction is banned completely, but Sisters of Silence are allowed. And I was like, well, damn, like that hurts. And so like in our Discord, I was like pretty upfront about like, man, that kind of hurts for community building and like feels pretty hostile if you're a Custodes player. And then I got the rundown again. I don't know anything about Horus Heresy or the meta or what's good and what's not. But I got the rundown that apparently they're like extremely overpowered in the game. I guess Custodian Guard are like the best thing ever, and everybody runs like 50 to 60 guard, and they crush. Yeah, to Kelly's point in the chat, they like crush Marines immediately, and it's just over for you. I was like, all right, cool, I get that. And also, like, I would be a brand new player. I know nothing about that. I would love to bring like not just Custodian Guard to roll over people, but instead bring like, I have like a Telemon that I love. I have an Achilles that I love. Like, I have tanks that I love. I have Guard and Aquilon Terminators that I love. Like, I like putting cool hobby stuff on the table. So I was pretty vocal about the notion that like trying to prevent seal clubbing in a new community is not about like banning factions. For example, you could imagine someone starting a 40K league at the beginning of 10th, and the league being like, you know what, we're just going to ban Eldar completely. And like, I mean, you could, and like, there's a universe where maybe that makes sense because they were pretty crazy. But also, like, the people who are interested in clubbing seals coming in are going to try to find a way to do that no matter what. And the best way to get around that is to like have a conversation with them about what you're trying to do as community, and like the way that you're trying to onboard new players to like build up interest, passion, all that stuff for the years to come. And like banning people from playing the things that they like is not the move. I don't think ever. But having like adult conversations about what sort of community expectations you're setting and what you're trying to build is like that always works. And I was talking about how like I've had games where I got absolutely blasted that were super fun, and I've had games that I won that were like god awful experiences that I don't want to do again. And the winning and the losing parts of those are sort of independent from like how enjoyable an experience it is. So that didn't land well. And so I may or may not end up actually joining this Horse Heresy League because it didn't seem as if that was the vibe in 30K. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. Like it could just be the vibe. I could just like be taking the wrong approach. Let me go check out. This is the mistake I made. Let me go check out the Horse Heresy Reddit. Hit the sub, see what's up. Like see what the general vibe is in that community. And
the
vibes
are off,
bro. Like I swear to God, like oh my God, I should have been preparing for a screenshot for it. So there's like a new player guide post that you read, and knows like shout out to you if you're a Horus Heresy player, like keeping it positive and real and casual and cool and doing all the right things that like normal people would do if they're trying to build a friendly community up. The first post for new players is like, remember, this is a narrative game and we're trying to recreate like historical fiction and the battles therein. I'm like, cool, I'm with it. Immediately following that advice about like emphasizing the fluff and the lore and the hobby and all that is a new player guide that's like, now that we've established that, here's all the ways to build like an extremely competitive overpowered list. And like one of them is no joke, like find a way to build a Death Star. I'm like, what is like, you can't say both these things at the same time. And like, Tim, you've talked about this before. A lot of when people pretend to be casual, but are actually like, nah, I just want you to bring worse models than me so I can beat you up. Like that's not real. That's the worst kind of experience that you can have in this game because like you're coming in with like your 3 monoliths or whatever, and you're like in there for the jokes. You think you guys are on the same page, and then like they're coming in with whatever nonsense is in the Eldar Codex still because it's still an absolutely ridiculous book. And you're like, cool, I thought we were on the same page, but I guess not. Yeah, it just seemed like the first post itself just seemed like dishonest, and that sucked. So it's just like, all right, maybe I just don't play this. That's fine.
Yeah,
this is what it is.
I'll be honest. That's why I only play tournament and practice events now. Because at this point, I am so deep into that rabbit hole where I just can no longer turn it off. Like I just
right.
Like the way I read data sheets and the way I read a board is just at this point, just even the way I construct, if I put like artificial constraints on myself, I still construct.
Still optimizing within it, yeah.
I'm constructing with a purpose, like a job, It's just certain things that you just get to a point you can't do.
Yeah.
It's just nice when you go to tournaments and like presumably, it varies a little bit by region, but presumably everyone like knows like what's up. Like it's kind of like, hey, you're not a dick. Everyone knows that you're going to try to show up and give like your best game.
Yeah.
That being said, I do like one of my like guilty pleasures is when I get to do I haven't seen one in a long time, but I always love doing the Highlander RTTs.
Oh, so
those
great.
Like those because those really kind of it's just enough of a twist.
Yeah.
You have to like kind of like think outside the box like a little bit, and it's like if you only get to bring one thing, you're like, well, do I make that thing an MSU? Or do I make it like a big hammer unit because I can only bring one of it, Like, or if you have like multiple units competing for the same type of like characters or force multipliers, but you can only bring one, it's kind of like, who's gonna get it, So I really like the questions that poses during list building, and it prevents you from just like if it's a data sheet that's causing your book to be kind of like busted or a little over the top or something like that, it kind of caps how out of control that can get.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It just seemed there's like a level of disingenuousness in saying that you're like casual, fluffy lore experience first, and then immediately focusing on the competitive viability of factions or units as a means to limit the game. Because then you're saying like, oh, you actually don't care that much about the like not winning or losing. You care a lot about winning and losing. such that you're like changing the way that we're going to play the game. In that, which is fine. Just like, let's just be real about it,
Yeah, just like this is one of those good times to say the quiet part out loud. There's a lot of bad times to say the quiet part out loud. That term's used mostly for like bad situations. But this is like one where we're all kind of like being coy and tap dancing around it. But it's like, come on, man. Like,
like, come on, it's just
we know what's up. Let's stop gaslighting ourselves here.
It's cool.
You got anything else you want to talk about, or you want to? We had a lot of questions, man. I'm kind of feeling like we have questions. I think some of these questions were kind of like stuff we kind of touched on, danced around in the episode, anyhow. So I'm kind of thinking that like if we start hitting the questions, like they're actually going to lead to some really good conversations. Some of these questions I can tell are going to become conversations.
That's good. No, let's jump into the questions. I can do dashboard updates later this week when they actually like throwing out.
Yeah. And then also, if we have time at the end, we can also like do a quick little plug about like dashboard stuff like that too, because you're doing so much cool stuff with the dashboard and Elo and that kind of stuff. And it also is really cool to see. I'm starting to see that dashboard more and more in the wild, and also I'm starting to see Elo more and more in the public vernacular. Not so much like in the public places like Reddit and Facebook, but like with a lot of the players who are traveling and going to a lot of events or playing team events, stuff like that. More and more of them seem to be trying to like are starting to like figure out what Elo is or realizing the value of it, stuff like that. And it's becoming more accepted with that group, and that's eventually going to like kind of like filter down.
I was gonna say,
Art of War like especially has been mentioning a lot of the stat check stuff and the Elo stuff in their videos, so that's gonna filter down eventually.
Shout out Art of War crew, y'all doing good work.
This past weekend, man, they were just absolutely upstanding. Like in addition to being like incredibly dominant, they were just being absolutely upstanding from a sportsmanship level. It was really cool to see.
Those guys are, they're chill. Talk about playing the right way. They play the right
way. Okay, so first question, not from Dan F. Not a question, but I hope you all have a wonderful and relaxing Thanksgiving surrounded by ones you love. Thanks, Dan. You too. We are going to... I said we're going to wake up tomorrow early, do a little run with the family and some friends. Then we're going to have some good food. And then we're going to finish up by watching some good old American football. And then I'm going to go to sleep with a belly full of turkey and sweet potatoes.
Additional bonus for the American people: you get to watch the New York Jets get probably demolished by the Dolphins on Friday, which is great. Just great.
I am unfortunately a Cowboys fan, but I know locally down here the Dolphins fans are going to be very excited.
They're all crazy, yeah. I'll just be sad.
Second part from Dan. Now for the question: if it hasn't been covered already, how do you go about putting the stink on people? Well, you're just in luck. We did kind of break it down. I am very happy to join the hollowed ranks of Death Guard event winners this edition.
Yeah,
I think there's 4 Death Guard event wins. But the TLDR is 30 Plague Marines and 3 Rhinos, and then push the Rhinos into the center objective, shoot some PBC at some trash, and then see what your opponent does. It's a little more involved in that, but like almost every single one of my first turns went the exact same way, which is good. It's really good for clock management because you're just like Rhinos, indirect, homers, pass turn.
We got to get This will be a job for our Discord. We got to get somebody to take the Stankonia album cover and throw up the Biologus and Typhus helmets up.
That'd be good.
Andre 3000 and Big Boy. And then just
hell, I might do that instead of getting some scenes right. Cindy's like, "What are you doing?" I'm just like, "Nothing. Shut up." She's like, "Go to bed." From Rickard, question for Tim. A few people struggle with fitting in a weekend GT into hectic schedules. After doing an Ironman, do you feel those have a space in the event scene? We've done a few in Ottawa. I very much enjoy them. Yes, I do. However, if you have maybe not been taking care of yourself mentally and physically, an Ironman is going to take its toll on you. It's going to take your toll on you in general. But I think that was a big part of this weekend was going into round 4. Like I was feeling really good. I kind of didn't eat good that day, but I've been going after post WTC. I've been going back to the gym. I've been eating well. I've been trying to be active every single day. be a little more mindful of my eating, stuff like that. And I felt it during the. I had tons of energy from 8:30 in the morning all the way to 11:30 at night.
Awesome.
It was good, and I was moving around. I was on my feet the entire time. Like I basically ate some Cuban pastries and Cuban coffee when we got there. Had like 2-3 slices of pizza and a Coke Zero for lunch. Did a clutch Chick-fil-A run at like 10 o'clock at night. And then I did 2 trips back to my house to let my wife and kid were out of town. I did 2 trips back to my house, which is 3 minutes away, and let the dogs out. But I was like up and moving like the entire time. But I would say I like the Ironman a lot because I mean I felt like hammered dog shit the next day. I had to go to work at 9 a.m. on a Sunday. And I was those Gatorades that are like Pedialytes, they're called like Gatorlights or whatever.
Yeah.
I pounded like 2 of those in the morning, and I felt better about 2 hours in my shift. But I felt like I'd been out partying like all day long the next day. I was those first 2 hours at work, I was hurting. But then I recovered.
Talking takes a toll for real. Like the amount of talking you do over the course of a tournament is like that's real.
Well, the amount of like thinking too, like your gray matter is like definitely burning calories like when you're thinking, you know, and like you're standing up or whatever. Like luckily the tables were like kind of a little bit taller, so it wasn't like killing my lower back or anything like that.
So good.
Yeah, so that was really nice. And I wore good shoes because that section where most of the tables are in, especially the top tables at that store, it's an expansion, and so it doesn't have finished floors yet. So it's just raw concrete.
Oh, that's tough. Yeah.
So I wore good shoes for that. But yeah, Ironmans are great. I wouldn't make them the default for like GTs, whatever, but like I think like kind of like interspersing them in is good because like sometimes people just want the 2-day experience. Like, you know, some people they can hang, they can do it, you know, and it's just like if they got to work weekends or they're like a shift worker, like EMTs, policemen, nurses, stuff like that. You know, it's hard to get time off work, and if you give them the opportunity to go to GT in a single day, like they'd probably really appreciate that.
Get it in. Yeah.
Next question: Thanksgiving tier list. That is like super wide open, but I'm gonna assume we're talking about food. For me, S tier, yams. Rest of S tier, there is no S tier, but there is a big section of A tier. Turkey, spiral ham, good mashed potatoes with the peel left on, and some garlic.
Mac and cheese done well.
Mac and cheese, yes, mac and cheese. That might be borderline S tier. And then I like scalloped potatoes with cheese are really good too. Then like B tier would be like stuffing, mostly because like
B tier stuffing is interesting. That feels like a hot take.
It is a little bit of a hot take, but like some people's stuffing is just trash. It is just so trash. Yeah. Like, and you never know like which stuffing you're gonna get. You know, like I've never seen someone show up with bad sweet potatoes. You know, but and like the turkey, as long as you have like. As long as it isn't like super dried out, even if it is super dried out, you put some gravy on the white meat, like you're good, you know. Or you just get in there quick and you grab all the dark meat for everyone else, and like you usually are fine. But if someone just brings like, some people just, you know, like some people they just do weird shit, and you're just like, why are you the way you are? Sometimes those people show up to your house with stuffing, and you look at it and you're like,
you know,
what is that? Why did you do that? You know, like, and you just eat it, and you're like, wow, you know, like. So that's why it's B tier. So when it's good, it's like top of the list. When it's bad, it's like below the tier list. You know, it's like outside of the computer frame. It is off the screen. And then I don't know. I don't really care after all that. Like it's because it's all sorts of like side dishes that you only ever see like once every 4 like Thanksgiving, stuff like that. You know, my Friendsgiving was awesome because we had like a great like cultural mixing pot. So we had like we were getting like deep South, like traditional like black like comfort food. We were getting like Puerto Rican dishes, Venezuelan stuff. You know, like we were just getting like a huge mix or whatever. So that was really 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 cool.
You guys got the okra done right.
Yeah, so we got all sorts of good stuff. Like it was really, really, really. Someone brought catfish, which is my first time having catfish for Thanksgiving, and it was good. It was
catfish
so good.
goes so hard when it's done well.
Yes, this one was done well, but like I can't put that on Thanksgiving tier list because I don't know when the next time I'm gonna have catfish for Thanksgiving, but it was up there. But for me, like my sweet spot is definitely like the sweet potatoes and yams. So they're just that is like Thanksgiving for me. Then it's like turkey and ham, and then I don't care after that. A roll maybe.
So ham for me is like C tier. I can't fuck with ham. I can't do it.
You don't like ham?
I can't fuck with ham. Yeah.
I don't like pork. I don't like pork, but I do love ham. But I think I've kind of been like, maybe I've been like abducted by like the local Miamians because like ham or like jamon as they call it, like is such a big part of like Cuban culture, and it's just, and that's everywhere down here, and so but they do it really well. So I might be getting a little bit biased at this point.
I'm with you. I'd throw mac and cheese. Well done mac and cheese joins S tier with turkey for me.
Yes. Especially when they put the good expensive cheese in there.
Oh God. And it's like baked, and it's a little bit crispy at the top. And,
yeah. Man. Oh, when they flash it with the broiler, like on the top rack, like just a little bit.
Yeah. But then it's susceptible to the same thing that the stuffing is like. Every now and then you get somebody to show up to your house, they bring the mac and cheese, and you're like, what is this soupy nonsense? And why did you bring it in here? Like,
you're like, why did you? Well, and the worst part is like when everyone's kind of like, especially if you're like one of those, like you're doing like kind of like a potluck situation, and they take that spot. And so it's like they take that spot and then they show up with trash. And I'm like, man, not only did you show up with trash, you basically told someone else who could do it way better not to do it.
I got this. You locked it out. Why would you do that?
Yeah. You locked Jimmy out of the mac and cheese, and he showed up with like Caesar salad in a freaking bag. Thanks. What, this is the darkest timeline.
Great question.
That was a good question. Yeah. How many times did Tim use the grenade stratagem across the event? Over or under 50?
It's gotta be over.
Really, surprisingly, not really. I think I use it. So 3 biologists. I think I use it like maybe 25 times the event, and that's me guessing. I think it was probably less than that because I think there was a lot of times where the only time I did the full combo was on my second orc game where Mark Parker showed up with like 120 orc boys, 10 flash kits, and a gargantuan squigoth. And I was like,
what a boss.
You know what Death Guard do? And he's like, yeah, I know what they do, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay.
You're gonna learn. You're gonna learn tonight.
So So I push up the rhinos, and I put all like I push up the rhinos, I push up the Terminators on the flank, and I just put a bunch of Nurglings behind them all, and then behind a wall so they can't be shot. And I'm just and then I do homers, and I'm like, your move. And he pushes up with everything, and he does like across 3 rhinos, he does like 6 wounds.
Oh no.
And I'm kind of like, all right, this is where I pick up your entire army. And then I did the full combo for the gargantuan squigoth, and it was on 1 wound, and then like a lone plague marine like popped it with the plasma pistol. And also he lost 18 orc boys on the way in to a Terminator Overwatch because they have 76 anti-infantry 4-up flamers.
Yeah, that's hard.
So he learned about that. And then everything got out of the rhinos, did the combo to the orc boys, the big 10-man unit, flamed another unit. I just had bolters and plasma and like just random weapons, and everything was like on lethal hit 5s, and like everything was like all his shit was like -1 toughness, and it was just so unbelievably brutal. And he just had like scraps of crap, and then I charged. And then he had like scraps of like just crap left, and then when he fell back, he like immediately lost it to like Flamer Overwatch, and he was just kind of like and the thing about Parker is he's like known for getting salty, but like in a really funny like boomer kind of way, and it's just and he knows it too, and it's just so funny. Like two of the other guys from Miami Dice, they finished their game. they like literally talked out the last 2 turns of their game really quick, so they could spend a solid 15 minutes just watching Parker just melt down as his entire army just got ripped apart. So that was good. But usually, besides that game, most of the times it was like I would grenade here, I would bio grenade here, bio grenade there, and the third biologist would be like in Guam or somewhere else, doing something else like that.
Yeah.
And then the next turn, I would grenade again, and then I would biologist grenade. And so it was kind of like I would use like 60% of my output for grenades on this turn, and then 40% of my output of this turn, and then I would like never really do it again. The list had plenty of activations where I didn't really need to spend CP to kill stuff.
Forward on.
Yeah.
So,
Especially with Typhus, like just running around, like just this big old belly, just like super smiting people. God, I
just
love
dropping
that so much.
D6.
That guy's like my favorite dude. Plus he's like, I randomly. Oh, actually, hold on. I'm gonna show you this real quick.
Yeah, here we go. Hobby time. What up, Sam? Welcome. Oh, it's like daytime over there. You eating lunch? Probably.
All right, so you gotta remember, I bought this army back in like June, July when Death Guard were terrible, and I got it for like turbo cheap. I think I paid like 600, 650, and it came with everything. I think I had to buy a biologist and then like 2 or 3 boxes of Plague Marines to field like what I've been running, and that was it. And when I was inventorying everything I had, like most of the stuff was halfway finished or like base code or whatever. And then randomly there was this guy. Wait, let me.
He looks good.
Yeah,
hold
on a second. Let me turn off the blur background. So look at this dude.
Let's go. Someone did good work on that.
Bro, he's like a pro painted Typhus, man.
Yeah.
I'll post pictures in the Discord. I can't quite get to focus, but like
nice.
He came out crazy good, and just so happens he's like my favorite model too.
Good work. Great model.
Yeah, so that was really cool. So and also he never died the entire event. I think I lost like 4 Terminators over the course of the event. So that was really awesome. Next question. Thanksgiving sides tier list. Mac and cheese supremacy is what Rickard says. That was just he just quoted Preston's question, so we already answered that. Nikki D says, if there's another tournament format that's named after another superhero, what superhero should it be? So I would say, first of all, I think Iron Man's like named after like the Iron Man race, but let's just assume that it is named after like Tony Stark Iron Man. I would say maybe a Hulk tournament. And so if a GT is 5 rounds at 2,000 points apiece, that's 10,000 points. So I'd say the Hulk would be you run 6,000 points for game 1, and then you run 4,000 points game 2, and then you're done.
That's not right. I thought you were going Incredible Hulk tournament, and you have to have an Incredible Hulk at the beginning of each of your rounds of the GT. And that for some of the younger folks, Incredible Hulk is what the drink used to be called, where you mixed Hypnotic and Hennessy together into a single drink. It would turn green, and it would turn green and taste terrible. But like, you were good after a few.
That is the nastiest drink I've heard since the Darth Vader, which is. I was introduced to this in way back when in some dumb dive bar on Virginia Beach, and apparently it was called the Darth Vader because it will take you to the dark side, and all it is a Long Island iced tea, but instead of the splash of Coke, they put a shot of Jaeger in it.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, it's already just alcohol.
Yeah, if you ever see me like in person, like not in a place where like I can't be screenshotted, like in a chat with 400 people about it, ask me about that night in Virginia Beach. I'll have stories. The next question: what is the greatest hobby sin one can commit? One thick coat, prime one sprue, etc. Which ones do you commit? I'm gonna let Cliff go first on this one.
Gosh, there's the funny version, which is like painting your fucking rims anything but black, which is the one that I like fake care a lot about. Like, really, honestly, aesthetically, you should just paint them black and then make the rest of it look nice. But I get it. If you want to do like desert theme and the whole thing is painted like Martian red on the outside. Good, that's fine. You do you. Man, I think the genuinely tough stuff for me is when you have somebody who like, this will sound elitist now. If you're an event and you're saying, hey, we use battle ready or whatever, and you're like, yeah, you got to throw 3 colors on here, then like everyone needs to have 3 colors on there. And for me as a hobby sim to show up and skate by with like a bullshit version of 3 colors because you painted all the model 1 color and then the gun a splash of something else and then like maybe a stripe somewhere. Like, you know what you're doing.
Cliff, I'm going to be honest. At the
Stop doing
GT,
that.
3 of my 12 Nurglings were just prime coat. They were just prime Death Guard green with a huge Norn oil wash on them.
But it was 3 of them, right? And the rest of them look. I've seen them; they look great.
Yeah, the rest of them looked fine, but like it was like I'd been up. So I was up so late painting Plague Marines where I'm just like my eyes were bleeding. I was like, I
Like,
can't. And so like with my dying breath, I assembled and primed and washed these stupid Nurglings, and I was like, maybe I'll paint like some horns in the morning. And the morning came, and I did not paint the horns.
No. They're also Nurglings. They're tiny. It's hard to like. I get it.
Yeah,
but
I was just like, I basically like as Nurglings died, like, and this is just kind of like a thing I do a lot of times. Like as long as it's not like a super critical moment where like millimeters matter or something like that, like as stuff dies, I'll just be like, hey, do you mind if I just replace it like with a painted model or something like that, and I'll swap it out. So as my army dies, it gets better painted. For me, I had to think about this. My hobby sin would be when people put basing material on the side of the rim, like all the way around the side of the rim.
Whoa, that might be worse. I didn't even think about
that. It makes your base look like an oatmeal cookie.
People do that?
I've seen it.
Who's doing that? Ew.
Psychopaths are doing that.
I replace it. I replace the black rim thing with that. That's awful. You can't do that. I didn't even know that was possible.
Search pictures of it. It looks gross. No, I'll search pictures of it. Hold on a second.
No. I said like a very visceral
Warhammer
reaction.
Bases, textured side.
Good God, don't do that, please.
Oh. I think okay, this is not quite what I'm looking for, but this one is. No, that's not it. Dang it.
Yeah, I'll happily get behind if you're doing that.
Here, I found one. Hold on. Here. Let me. This is from old. And this one's not even that bad. I've seen so much worse. Look at this.
What is happening?
Yeah, that right there. And that's
if you're doing that, you gotta stop. That's
pretty mild. That is pretty mild. I've seen some like ones where like it is just like it's a goblin green oatmeal cookie all the way across.
No, hard no. I understand this is all our own game. We don't want to yuck anybody's yum, but like if you're doing that, you're objectively wrong.
Yeah, that is all yuck. That is all yuck, no yum.
Good Lord. It literally did not occur to me as a possibility in the range of things that I considered. Holy cow.
From Jack Daniel Morris. Oh man, I'm going to have to do this later. He wants me to do a lottery. The next time he wants me to do a lottery for the Stat Chick members. I will, and then spin it. I will do that. I'll do that at the end because if I can get Cliff to go on a long tangent, that will give me like enough time to like ninja add that in there. Next question from Griggs. Congrats, Tim. Do you think the World Champs revealed anything new about the meta? I think it really showed how much skill is still like a thing. Like just because you have X faction and Y faction, and like supposedly this is like not a great matchup for each other. Like you're not taking into account terrain, mission. There's an element of who went first and dice. There is skill differentials a very real thing. And there's a certain point where like if there's a critical mass of skill difference, like sometimes it doesn't matter if the matchup's bad. You can really, really, really do stuff. So I think it reinforced that a little bit. It was interesting because like everyone was either Eldar or they were running a list that was like hard tech for Eldar.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of people who were trying to do the thing where they went off the beaten path and they brought the faction that like no one was really planning for. And I think we saw that like at that level of play, like that just doesn't work. You know, you're just
Can't get
unless,
cute.
yeah, unless your list like just actually like punishes like meta choices that meta lists are taking, you know, and like becomes like a true counter meta list. Like it just doesn't, that concept like doesn't work at that high level because these are all like GT and major winners for the most part, you know. Like there was a couple events where it was just kind of like, you know, the same people were showing up over and over again, and like the gold GT fell down to like the people who placed like 8th and stuff like that. But for the most part, like this was a room full of like super like cutting edge like killers, you know,
Yeah.
like 1800 and 1850 elo and up, you know.
Yeah.
1850 was like 1850 was like the soft elo.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah. So that
I
was
can do a little. I can
yeah,
do a
go
little,
for it.
a little dashboard thing.
This would be a perfect time. Do
Yeah.
this. Talk about elo. Talk about all your like the elo and all that kind of stuff on the dashboard, and I'm gonna like fill out that wheel of names real quick.
That lottery sitch.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So I'm going to share. I'm going to share screen. I'm going to hit the dashboard to answer this question because I think there's some interesting comparisons in here. This is the working draft. Yeah, you can see my screen. All right, cool. So this is the working draft that we've got in the background. We've got some cool new stuff here, like in anticipation of all these new books coming out. You'll be able to like click on a given faction, pop up on all the detachments inside, get the live comparisons of what's good and what's not, and then you can click on these, see their stats on the right side. It's gonna be great. Anyway, so this is the current meta as of this weekend. Eldar up top, then Chaos Space Marines, then Leagues, all outside that 55% hard limit that we like to see on what a balanced faction win rate looks like. They're also doing quite well, especially Eldar and CSM in the event win universe and in the 4 event start universe and in the overrep universe and in the player population universe, right? This is what the like meta looks like. One of the cool things about the dashboard is that you can like slice data even by event. So we can scroll down, check out what it looked like for the World Championships Warhammer and see like what is the player distribution like, what are the win rates, etc. And since there were like 170-ish players there, it's not like a small number of games played, especially for some of these factions. We've got like over 100, over 200, etc. But here, the thing that I like most about like, so given what Tim said, which is true about these being some of the like the best players in the world all coming together, not including folks that like don't really do singles because they're super team focused. I know there's a lot of folks in the EU, UK, overseas that do that. And other folks just might not have been able to make it despite winning GTs. Gives us a pretty good sense of like what the bleeding edge meta looks like. And the positive record window here is super interesting to me because you can tell a few things. One, there are a few factions where like not a single person had a positive record, which is brutal. And then there's a bunch more factions where like a very low number of people had a positive record. That goes Leads, Tau, Tyranid, Space Marines, Dark Angels, Thousand Suns, Chaos Knights, Depth Swords, Astral Militarm. Very few people in those places had positive records. And then you've got like, okay, these are what the top tier looked like even among these folks. Like folks who won at least 4.5 counting draws or 5 out of their 8 games. More if they like made the shadow and like the eventual finals. But you got Templars doing well with 7 players, a couple Orc players, 5 Necron players, 3 Blood Angels players, 18 Eldar players, which was a little over half of their entire player population. 4 World Eaters players, 2 Space Wolves players, 2 Death Guard players, and 10 Chaos Space Marine players. So there's like a clear sense that like these factions up here, if you're like a killer, really know the game, really know what you're doing, are like not a terrible place to start. Then there's just like the more aggregate analysis you can do. Looking at the player population, you're like, all right, what did people think was good? Eldar, obviously. Then Chaos Space Marines, the eventual winners. Then Tau, interestingly enough. Then Templars. What's sort of off the wall about the Space Marine situation, why these look so crazy, is that like this was just John Lennon. For those who don't know, just John carrying with his like very off the wall Vanguard lists. Though if you were in our Discord about a month ago, we were throwing stuff around about like, man, Centurion Devastators are like would be kind of cool in the Vanguard detachment, right? So shout out to John for both executing with like spam undercosted shooting and also taking a spin on a list that was otherwise like not really being looked at by anybody. So yeah, hit the dashboard. There's gonna be cool new stuff like this out in the next few weeks. You can analyze by event, dive in there, take a look at what the World Championships meta presented, and then see what kind of cool comparisons we got across the board. Hopefully that gave Tim enough time because I'm going to stop sharing now and return to the screen.
Okay, before I forget about it, let me share screen. You like that? Cliff, whatever you said, I can't hear you. You're muted.
I'm muted. I said, oh, that's good.
You like that? Slam that over. That is the prototype logo. It's like 90% done. We're gonna do a little bit of optimization, stuff like that, but just a little touch. But that was actually I don't even know how it started, but there is a running gag / meme in the Chaos Knight section of the Stat Check Discord, and the energy is just insanely chaotic in there. It's really hard to put it into words. You kind of just, if you're not a member of that Discord, or if you are and you don't go to the chaos section, just spend a day in the Chaos Knight section. It is something. And anyhow, the meme is kind of taking on life. Now it's all about the hogs. And now we're going to be doing in the near future objective markers and dice, just kind of commemorate this ridiculous emergent joke that is going to come on. So I just thought it'd be funny to throw that in there as the background image. All right, I'm going to do 3 spins because I don't know how many spins Jack is looking for here. But first one, look at that hog go. That hog is cranked.
Literally, you're cranking this hog.
Who's going to land on? It is me. Okay. Number 2.
Genius. This is genius. Looking like Nathan Roberts.
Nathan Roberts. Last one. Cranking that hog.
Crank. Typhus?
Yeah, Typhus. All right.
Got him.
That was fun.
Hog's cranked.
Yeah. So let me post. Let me see. Innis.
Your man, Dan.
Yeah, it's not letting me post. I'll just remember that later. So Innis, Nathan R, and Typhus. Don't let us forget. Okay. On to the rest of the questions. If I can find where I went. Where is it? Oh no, totally lost my place.
Oh.
Nope, found it. We have so many channels now. Scrolling up, scrolling down. Okay, from Dan. Tim, how does it feel if people are going to be net listing your original list with the motor to split or change any fine points you've already gone over that you'd like to share with someone hoping to put that stank on others? Would you recommend your list or Liam VSL's WWC list for a 6-week, 3-game competitive league? I think both are fine. Brigands are his big change is that he has, I think, 2 10-man bricks. No, actually, I think he has 1. He runs the Brigands. So what I'd recommend with his list is one of your rhinos with 2 units of 5. Reserve it. And then make sure that one of the biologists is in there, and then that gives you a tool that you can push because you don't really have as much combat stuff in that list. But you do have brigands, which are a very efficient data sheet, and it's really good shooting. And the extra AP versus close unit pairs really well with the contagion that reduces people's save by 1. But it lets you push with dudes in a rhino. I also like into Eldar because if they push into you with the Incarn, then you can immediately rapid ingress right next to the Incarn with the Rhino. And then the Incarn goes into whatever. But then in your turn, you grenade for 1 CP, then you grenade for 0 CP, then you shoot it and you charge it. And if you don't kill it, you really mess it up. So it gives you a nice little reactive piece to the Incarn. But you have to be really careful with how you use your Plague Marines that list because that list is more shooting oriented and doesn't quite have as much melee because outside of your 33 Marines, you don't really have any melee in that list. So you can kind of quickly get yourself into trouble. But that list does shoot way harder than it should. So I don't have an answer to which one you should. It's just which one feels better to you. I think they're both going to be fine. No changes to my list besides the mower to spitter change, and we talked about it. I think it's pretty straightforward. I would still really recommend the Disgustingly Resilient podcast for the Interview Max, and then the Contact Loss podcast for the Interview Max, and that'll get you like 90% of like there to like the way like the list plays. And then after that, it was just me kind of like just coming up with stuff on the spot, or just like, just leaning into what works. And don't forget the Triangle of Doom. 3 objectives, Triangle of Doom. Nikki D, what's the Michael Jordan of Thanksgiving side dishes? And then in parentheses, he says, notice I didn't ask the LeBron of side dishes, because he's clearly trying to start a fight with Cliff.
I know. It's okay. We can provide the side dish that like is good as its peak with a couple of other Hall of Fame pieces, but can't get it done on its own due to the ravages of age. Oof. Yes, we can do that.
Oof. What is it?
It might be mashed potatoes. I say that because mashed potatoes is phenomenal when it's done really well. But if it fails, it requires the support of great meat, whatever it is, or great gravy. You have to have those to be able to bail it out. And if you don't, it's just done. It's just a done dish.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Sorry, I just reloaded my internet real quick.
You're good.
So here's another question for you. What are the Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman of dishes?
I think Rodman's gravy for sure. Like okay. Rodman is low key. If you have like a Hall of Fame gravy involved with your Thanksgiving dinner, like so much of the other dishes get elevated. Stuffing gets turned up, the meat gets turned up, the mashed potatoes get turned up. Like it brings so much else up. And it's just like operating in the background, low key, killing it.
Bro, I loved watching what Rodman was doing, like back like during like the Michael Jordan heyday. Like Pippen obviously doesn't get talked enough about, which is because he was right there the entire time with MJ. But it was always really cool to see Rodman like with the rebounds, like the defense and everything like that.
Yeah, Rodman's. Oh man, I have a whole take that like he was in fact the most important person on the Chicago Bulls team, and like
I can see it. I could totally see that. He was fucking Rod. Like never mind the wedding dresses. The guy knew how to fucking ball.
He's so good. Yeah.
Next question from Sam. Congrats, Tim, on the win. What advice will you now be giving Don Houston on getting good with Death Guard? Don't take plate surgeon. Apparently he likes plate surgeons, and every time I look at that model, I just get upset. I'm like, why? It's just it's not good. You will actually start your event at like 0-2, like just by signing up with that in your list.
For free.
What advice do you give to your partners or family members for buying Christmas gifts that are related to the hobby, or you say not to buy anything? We actually are doing a Secret Santa with my extended family this year, which is really cool. Because it's kind of like
that's cool.
The assumption is that everyone's going to put up a wish list, so there's not even like that awkward dance of like I don't want to ask for stuff, like that sort of thing. You just get to put like you're being asked like basically kind of like a gunpoint, like hey, what do you want, and then you can put it up there. Was it Rosemary and Company brushes? What are the brushes that everyone uses? They're like $20 a piece, whatever.
Gosh, the dry brushes or the normal ones?
The normal brushes. Not the Artist Opus ones, like the actual.
Is it Raphael and Co. or Winsor Newton? The Winsor Newton 7 series.
Maybe the Series 7 ones.
Winsor Newton, yeah.
That was it. That's a really good. That's what I would put up because like everyone knows like if you try to get people to like if you ask for like paint, they're gonna like buy like some weird paint from Michaels. If you ask for like models, like you're gonna get like a freaking like model train or something like that. Like it's one of those things where like you tried. But if you ask for these and you give examples of like these like nice paintbrushes, like these like really nice like Series 7 brushes, like the ones and the zeros, which are like your bread and butter for painting. Yeah, those things.
Number 2, been through the trenches. It's so good. This paintbrush is like 5 years old, still going. So
yeah, it's a really good brush. I really enjoy using it, but it's also like they're expensive, but like it's one of those things that like no matter what army you're on, no matter if you're more like if you're a couple years from now, if you're more competitive or you're more casual, or if you're going for like Renaissance man, best overall, like that's a really, really, really like good upgrade to yourself.
Yeah.
And it's also one where like if you already have one, you're not going to mind having more. And it's totally army agnostic. It's game system agnostic. And it's a super safe purchase. It's kind of like when you get older and you actually do want like underwear and socks and stuff like that, but then they get you like the really, really nice ones.
The nice ones.
The
Oh,
nice ones. Yeah, it's kind of like that sort of situation. So that's what I would recommend. Is just like ask for like really nice brushes. Like not like crazy nice, but like, like something reasonable. You're like, I really want a nice brush, and if my family member wants to buy me a $25 paintbrush instead of me buying it,
cool.
we're all winners here. So
Yeah.
that's what I would recommend.
Yeah. +1 on the hobby stuff. Get nice. Ask for high stuff.
Yeah. Hobby stuff is just generally a safer bet than anything like straight up like Warhammer specific. On paper, sometimes a unit looks efficient or good for its points and or abilities. However, in testing, you personally found them disappointing. What do you do in this situation? Do you trust the numbers and community consensus or look elsewhere? You kind of got to be honest, and ask yourself if you're giving that unit a fair shake, and if you're setting that unit up for success. Because if you are not, some units only do what they're supposed to do if you like generate that scenario for them, and if you're not consistently generating that scenario, you're not going to get the consistent results that people are talking about. So you have to kind of like be honest and ask if you're doing that. And then maybe you are, maybe it's just like not how you like to play. It doesn't jive with your play style, or it's just too unreliable to like get to that kind of board state. And then at that point, might want to be like, well, maybe this unit, the potential is there, but it's just I can't quite get it to where it needs to be to use it. I'm going to misuse it, or I don't like how it makes me play, or I don't like these awkward push pull decisions it puts me into. Then you look for something else. And if you do pull it out of your list, because I see questions like this all the time on like Reddit, like a Reddit or Facebook or Discord, and they're like, oh, well, for this army, what do you think? A bloodthirster or 3 units of blue horrors? And I'm like, okay, no context on the list. Also, those 2 units do completely different things. So
different things.
What are we trying to do here?
Yeah.
So yes, after you test that unit and like you go through all that, and if you make the decision to cut it, then ask yourself, is the role that unit was originally here for, is that something I need, or do I need this much of it? Can I cut it, or do I want to try to find something else for it? So I'm not super satisfied with that answer, but that's kind of, I think, the best I could really give based off the question as it was framed.
Yeah. There's also a little bit about the unit. Like, what did you may have picked the right role for the unit. You might have picked the right unit for the role, but maybe you just equipped it incorrectly, or like it didn't operate the way you thought it did. Because like Tim, you're looking at one of the units from your Death Guard army. You're like, oh, I need to change that to an anti-infantry weapon instead of
the mower. Exactly. The mower just like did not do anything. The drone itself, the unit the mower was attached to was great, but it was just like it was just a 100-point utility piece that was like no one wanted to put effort to kill it because it just didn't do anything. I don't know, maybe when I put the flamers on, maybe people will actually start killing it more, because now it does something. Who knows? But yeah, if you were honestly putting it into the situation, if you were honestly doing a good faith effort to get good data points, and your opponent is too a little bit, because like I've had times where like you play a game, you're like, yeah, I'm trying to test out this new unit, whatever, and then like your opponent goes first, he pushes up, he catches an angle, he kills your unit, and then in the game he's like, yeah, that new unit you're testing, I wasn't impressed by it. I'm like, you went first and killed it. Like, what kind of feedback is that? Like, but if you're giving if you're doing good faith testing and it's just not quite happening, then like I would just cut your losses and just do something else. Like if the community is telling, because you might be the guy who's telling you it's good, might just be one of those keyboard warriors who never plays, and he's just like gotten to his head like a kind of like a theory argument, and he just wants to be right in the internet. He doesn't actually play. He doesn't actually have your best interests at heart as far as like your success. So I would just cut losses, get more reps with the faction or the list, and then maybe see if it's like if something clicks, you could add that unit back later. From Alex Taus, since Tim won a one-day event, does that mean he went X in one? Also, I bought a World Eater. I bought a
Yes.
World Eaters Christmas box despite New Zealand pricing. Are you all happy? Yes, I am happy, and so will you. So Santa Angron is here to slay.
Yeah, he is.
World Eaters are so freaking cool, man. I'm sorry. I know I'm biased, but I fucking love World Eaters. That one guy, John, Tim, I noticed you lurk on Reddit and always answer questions. Not always. There's been a lot of questions where I start typing it out and I just delete the entire entry and I just close the window. I'm like, nope, not going to. Especially because like I see there's sometimes where like before I answer the question, I click on the guy's profile and I see how they respond to other people that engage that person, and then like if the vibes are off, I'll just skip it. I think some people like they try to lure you in with like an honest question, and then they just either just never leave you alone, or they just want to argue.
Yeah,
it's weird.
you're the trouble.
But I just want to give a shout out for being there to help the community in so many places. Now for the question: how dirty did AdMech get done based on the current reveals, especially the Cybernetica detachment? Your army rules, you get the army rule. I certainly don't love that design choice. That is for sure. It's a little too early to say though.
I'm dying.
I don't have an NDA, so I don't have early access, but I'm also not going to straight up like ask and put my friends that do have NDAs in unfair positions for that. Yeah, but so I don't really know. All I've heard is like vibes, like okay, side grade, upgrade, whatever. But to put in perspective, like when 10th edition was getting previewed, people shit all over the CSM preview because they're like, "Oh, you take damage to do damage. Oh, this is trash." And like, functionally, nothing. Like, there's only a little bit of points cuts, but like, really, functionally, nothing has really changed from launch CSM to release CSM. And now we're just seeing that like all the infantry can be just juiced to the gills with on-demand lethal hits, exploding hits, mark mixing, and access to rerolls. And a lot of the infantry is super cheap, especially when you apply those bonuses to it. And then you don't actually take that much damage usually because a lot of the stuff, especially the infantry, has like icons that let you like re-roll those tests and stuff like that. You know, it just goes to show you can't really knee jerk some of the stuff.
Yeah.
You know, but on the other hand, like the Death Guard stuff also like did look like crap when it first released, and it came out and it was crap. So it's the honest question is it's hard to tell. We've only seen like a fraction. But I will agree that I do not like that kind of design choice where it's like you withhold synergy from the army and then you just give it back later, and like that's not your baseline. That's like your additional rules is like now you're at the same baseline as other people. I don't know. I don't like that design choice.
Yeah, it's not great.
We'll see. It might be good, might not be good. It's really hard to tell until you put it on the table, especially with points. That's usually what it ends up coming down to is points.
Yeah. And like sort of purposely so in this case, since they want that to be their primary balancing mechanism for the edition. So.
For sure, it's what they've. It's definitely what they've declared as like their stated intent. You know, which like it's not always ideal, but like it's just one of those things where like you might as well just not try to fight it, just lean into it a little bit.
Yeah.
Also, I just every time there's a balance pass or an addition change, I treat it like a kind of almost like a video game, like a League of Legends or Diablo, like a season. And it's kind of like, well, what's the theme that the developers are trying to push this season in? You know, is this the season of vehicles? Is this the season of transports? Is this the season of guns? Is this season of undercosted infantry? Like, and then instead of trying to like fight that, you just kind of like lean into it, knowing that it's going to be different in like 3 to 6 months, anyways.
Yeah, it's a great analogy.
From Frank, the owner of Dirt Sheets. Tim, congrats on your GT win. What are some of the factions you think will see a boost in popularity after Atlanta? Anything surprising you from the event? Nothing really surprising to me from the event. I guess if I hadn't seen it beforehand, John's list would have been a surprise, but he had been kind of working on that for a while. And so I'm sure it was a surprise to a lot of people, but that I guess that would be like the default answers. That was a surprise. But I did see the work on that, and I had him explain to me how like it works and everything. And he walked me through everything that the Marnius Calgar, and then also everything that Uriel Ventress and Centurions can do. And I'm kind of like, okay, well, when you put it like that, it all seems like when someone sits there and explains to you how all this stuff works, you're just kind of like, how did I not see this? You know, like that's pretty crazy. But now when you say it all, it makes sense. But yeah, I think it just kind of leaned into like CSM. Everyone for the most part went for the safe pick, which was Eldar and CSM for the most part. Liam went Death Guard and he did well, but if he had gone CSM, he probably would have been in the finals. You know, probably would have been like a John Liam finals or a Liam Manny finals. But he still did really well with Death Guard. I think you're going to see. I think there's a real chance that we know Eldar are going to get hit in the next balance pass. I think at this point, it's pretty safe to assume CSM are going to get hit. I think there's surprisingly, I think World Eaters might actually end up accidentally catching a hit, even though they're not converting a ton of wins. Like that's just a very hard faction to make relevant without making oppressive. And I think they might fly a little too close to the sun and catch some targeted point hits or whatever. As long as it's 25 points, if the list only goes up 25 points, we're good. The list is 1975. Votan are for sure going to get hit.
Yeah, that's coming. The points are going to go up there.
Their points are going to go up, which I feel bad because they only have like 7, 8 data sheets, you know, and like right now they're doing well, and so they're kind of pressuring you to buy more plastic, and then you get the rug pulled out from under you with point hikes, and now you're just left with duplicates, not a bunch of units, but like duplicates of the same stuff, and you can't run a lot of it because you're just yo-yoing on points. But I think that's going to get hit. I think not to be biased, but like this is part of the reason why I was starting to put reps in it. I think Death Guard are slowly kind of like a month or two, like right now World Eaters are kind of like in the renaissance where like everyone's excited about it. Like people, you know, Anthony has shown that like, hey, this faction has what it takes. Here's how you do it. Here's the play patterns, blah, blah, blah. It's helped by the Christmas box set, you know, and so they're kind of going through the renaissance, and people are kind of, and also people who are playing CSM are already kind of like getting their World Eaters up and ready, you know, for when CSM inevitably gets hit, they can immediately, you know, they'll have reps some World Eaters. I think you're going to see something with Death Guard too, because I think Death Guard are strong. I think they're definitely a tier below World Eaters and CSM, and so they'll probably escape any kind of, if anything, Typhus might go back up to his original point cost because he's insane at 100 points. But that play style plays very similar to CSM, where it's like cheap dudes who punch harder than they should in transports backed up by combined arm shooting, you know, and indirect. It's kind of what CSM does, just CSM does it better and more efficiently. But Death Guard does the same thing, just not quite as good.
Yeah, which shows up in the results, right? Like in terms of event wins in the current iteration of the meta, which since the Space Marine Codex came out was eligible for play. It's Eldar, Chaos Space Marines at 9, and then Death Guard at 6 event wins. So like it's happening.
And as soon as, like I said, I think there's the top 4 factions, 5 actually. Eldar, CSM, Black Templars, World Eaters, Votan, and then I think Death Guard is somewhere in there. It gets very volatile after the first 4 or 5 factions, anyways. Black Templars people aren't talking about enough, but basically Black Templars right now are kind of doing the same thing that Death Guard and CSM do, where you just have undercosted dudes in transports backed up by good shooting, and your dudes in transports hit way harder than they should. It's a very common archetype outside of Eldar. It's a very good archetype. Black Templar might get hit too. I can see Crusader squads going up. I can see Sword Brethren and Hellbrecht going up. If you haven't played against Black Templar, that army is extremely real. So if they somehow manage to dodge nerfs, I think they're going to be dominant. I think Death Guard will be dominant once CSM, Eldar, and potentially World Eaters take hits. So if you for some reason you were trying to pivot for January, I would probably look into Death Guard and Black Templar personally.
Yeah. I think custodians I expect to get some pretty nice buffs because they've been
also anything. So I think those are like the best places to look, like right before balance pass, is like whatever is kind of like at that like B tier kind of thing, where like they're just ready and waiting for the predators to fall, and then everything that's at the bottom, like they might just throw the kitchen sink at it,
Yeah.
and then all it takes is about like 3 to 4 weeks of testing, and then someone finds like the magical key, and then right to the top.
Yeah.
It's kind of what's starting to happen with Death Guard, and what's
Yeah,
happening with World Eaters.
It's gonna get weird. It's gonna get weird. It's tough. I mean, I'm biased obviously towards Knights and Custodians, who I absolutely love, but like it's really difficult to buff them appropriately because they both get out of hand very quickly, given relatively little push on the power end. So
yeah, for sure. And the big part of that is the armies are in general are actually much closer than you think. Like you look at the meta dashboard and you see the bars really far apart, but like you can fuck around and find out like with like a top faction versus a bottom faction, like the actual damage and durability levels are actually very close together.
Yeah, things are pretty tight, even in our like overall trends over the entire 10th edition release. Like things are real close together. Everybody's in this zone between like 40 and 60%, which has not been the case before.
Yeah.
Last few months really.
Also from Frank, this is directed towards Cliff. Cliff, on a scale of quote very to quote let's fucking go, how excited are you for Monoliths in the preview Necron detachment?
Bro, I'm so fucking hype about that. So like people, even in our Discord, I think people are like, these previews don't look that good. But anytime I see like free movement into strategic reserves with no or very little limitations, like that's going to be hype. Like that will be good.
Someone's going to figure out like the right combo of like rules layering and data sheets to like just do nasty stuff with that.
Like John Lennon and Centurions and Vanguard detachments with Uriel Ventress. You're like, wait, what? I can do what with these now? Like,
I've gotten a lot of reps with GK, and I gotta say, or a lot of reps against Grey Knights, and I am definitely a little cautious on people who can do that, but also have good shooting. Because like when I play against Grey Knights with the Death Guard, I form the triangle of doom, and I have Nurglings all over the place, and I do -1 weapon skill, bliss skill, and then I let them come into me. I pop -1 damage, or I pop a heroic intervention, and then they take their pound of flesh, but it's not that bad, and they're stuck. And then instead of falling back and shooting them, I then just charge them, because if they're in engagement range, they can't miss Dimos away, And so that 30 Terminator list is designed to live in combat and punish you if you try to extricate yourself from combat and mass firepower in one spot. So the best thing you do is just camp on 3 objectives, and you pile up all those negative modifiers, and then you punch them in melee. So yeah. But with Necrons, but you can do that because they don't shoot that hard. They have the 2 librarians that do like the librarians do like what Typhus does, where they just do like D3+3 mortals, and it really fucking hurts. And you're like, please stop doing that, But that's it. And that's just a bunch of storm bolters. With Necrons, with like heavy locust destroyers, like doing that sounds really scary.
Yeah,
really scary, especially the that brick with the Destroyer Lord. I've been shot by that unit before. I did not like it.
Like that's a whole unit that you can just pop up and then pop right back down. It's gonna get it's
gonna get cool. And then like if they still have, and they're gonna have Veil. They've always had Veil, like, and so I'm already just kind of just thinking in my head like just the idea of like Night Size or Doom, whatever the transport is, like Night Size or Doom Size.
You got it, Night Size,
and then and Veil, and then just that one Lord with the bodyguard, and then like he teleports you, like, and then they're bouncing around, and like I can just see this being extremely dynamic and annoying. But that's kind of good though, because I'd rather play against that than these like stat check like boring builds. So I like the idea of really like the idea of dynamic Necrons.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. It'll be exciting.
What are your thoughts on turkey? Do you guys do a different meat on Thanksgiving? Ham gang rise up. Like I said, I don't like pork, but I do like ham. I'm now a convert to smoked turkey.
Smoked turkey, it's the way. Smoked or fried, those are both great.
Fried are good, but like I'd rather have someone else do the frying, and like super far away from my house.
Yeah.
But fried turkey is my favorite part. The best part about being the guy who does the turkey is before I serve it, I always steal both buttons. You know, unless there's someone that I really like, I steal both those things. I'm like, they're mine. I don't even tell anyone. Like I do when I'm carving it. I'm like, yoink, yoink.
Yoink.
For those of you who don't know, the button is
Love it.
basically it's like the turkey's like ass cheeks or something like that. But it's where the back of the turkey, where the spine is, where the thighs attached to the main body of the turkey. There's like a piece. It's like it's size of like a quarter to like an American half-dollar coin, and it's just the juiciest piece of dark meat. And it's like it kind of like sits in like a little hip socket or something like that. Um, and usually it's kind of like a little at least I was told that's like a tradition that like whoever prepares the turkey and that like gets one and then the guest of like honor or whatever like gets like the second one of her because like it's like the best cut of meat in the turkey. But I say fuck that and I take both of them.
Just imagine someone else in the know being like, "What happened here?"
Because they just see it like carved and they just see like white meat and dark meat. No one asks any questions and I'm just sitting there just like
Oh, man.
Jip says currently a 2-3 player. Oh, this is the question I was really looking forward to. Currently a 2-3 player playing a game. Okay, so he's a 2 and 3 player playing a game a week. Okay, I thought he was playing 2 to 3 games a week. Okay, so he self-identifies as a 2-3 player. He plays a game a week on average at his local club. I find myself consuming content, podcasts, articles, Discord, etc., far more than playing list building. I think that's pretty common with most people. I know I've said this a lot. He says, I know get reps in is the advice to get better, but how do you optimize the learning from games? How do you assess what content is consumable in a sea of podcasts, battle reports, and articles? I think I talked about this a little bit earlier. There is definitely a saturation level where I think your your brain gets saturated with content, and then like anything above that, just like it's like trying to fill a cup with water when it's full. It's just gonna just you can't fill it anymore. Um, I think it's very easy to get to that point. Like if you're listening to like 2 or 3, 4 podcasts a day, you know, or if you're like every single day to work, you're podcasting listen to podcasts to work, back to work, you know, that's 10 podcasts a week. You know, I think you can definitely get to a point where you're just your brain just gets like raw and numb to all of it. So like when I was preparing for this event, I hadn't really been listening to like podcasts or content consuming or whatever. Um, but I was kind of keeping a pulse on the meta with my work with stat check stuff like that, and generally knowing like what's good and what's out there and that kind of stuff, or like what's kind of like slowly and quietly rising through the ranks and spoiling events for people, you know, stuff like that. Stuff that's not winning events, but it's knocking other people out of contention. Um, I would do a little bit of listening to content to try to like find out that stuff. But for the Death Guard, I basically found content specific to a thing that I was trying to learn for an upcoming event specifically, and I laser focused on that. And I listened to the Contact Lost episode twice, and I listened to the Disgustingly Resilient interview twice, and then I read Max's article like 3 or 4 times, and that was over the course of like a week or so. And but then I didn't really do anything else. I just did normal stuff that was like not content, like not related at all to like consuming content. It was either just playing games or just doing something non 40K related or whatever. So that way it was not really stressing myself out and not kind of like overstimulating myself with like this, you know, all this noise of content creation or whatever. So that way I could really kind of like intake and chew on every single little piece of information that was being presented. And I would and that was actually really refreshing. And I think I would now at this point recommend if you to people to try to focus on just like play with the purpose when you're playing, play to improve a thing. Like, okay, well, this army has a lot of threats out of reserves and deep strike or fast guns or melee or whatever. This is going to be a game where I focus on really trying to screen. And maybe I won't win the game, but I'm just going to try to set up scenarios where I'm screening instead of killing this unit and just ending the game. I'm going to try to focus on like move blocks
Yeah.
or like, you know, like screening or that kind of stuff. And you just focus on that kind of skill, you know, or I have a combined arms list. but I'm going to try to do as much damage as I can via melee only. To kind of represent, like, I went second, I misdeployed a Forge Fiend or whatever, I lost a Forge Fiend, and my second Forge Fiend got screened out and didn't get good angles. And now I'm playing down 2 shooting units, and I'm having to make it up and look for, like, opportunities to charge 2 units at once with, like, Chaos Lord and Chosen, that kind of stuff. So I would, instead of just broadly, bump my mic, sorry for your recipes headphone users. Instead of just broadly drinking from the fire hose of any and all content, try to just one, like, reduce your content intake for a week or two and limit it to specific areas that you're going to try to improve in. So, like, for stat check, we more do like broad, like, meta level analysis. So, like, maybe we wouldn't be the best choice for this, but, like, I know Art of War does. Art of War, Vanguard Tactics, like, a lot of places out there, they do specific tips for, like, how to deploy, how to screen, know your enemy. What does this army do? What does this army do? What does this army do? If you know how to deploy, and if you know what every meta relevant army in the game does, that's actually going to carry you a very long way, as long as you have, like, a good solid strategy of playing the game, like picking good secondaries, making sure that you're setting up 10s and 15s and primaries, and you're trying to reduce your opponent's primary opportunistically. That's really going to be it. So I would just try to break it down to chunks, and then reduce your overall content consumption, and then laser focus it in. I guess would be the long-winded answer that I've said 5 times. What do you think, Cliff?
No, I think you summed it up, right? Like Tim won a GT that was 5 rounds in a single day. He did this by not getting cute, analyzing what was in each of the really good lists, seeing what the 2 best players who played a lot of pieces of those lists and their respective versions of it did, consumed content specific to that, played games, and won. Like, that's good. That's a firm foundation, I think, for what to do with just about any faction and getting better at it.
Yeah, this is again, and I'm going to share the screen here. So apologies for the podcast listeners, but, like, YouTube listeners, this is me kind of, like, taking over, or bringing over, like, my League of Legends background. So I'm going to share screen. This is just a random character I picked at random. So what does this have to do with 40K? Well, I would say, like, all of this up here is kind of like the recommended stuff, like, oh, this is how you build, like, these are, like, your runes or whatever. And this is, like, kind of like people saying, like, oh, this is what to include in your list. This is what secondaries to take, blah, 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 blah. But then you start getting down here, and this is a huge portion of it where it says, like, weak against, and it shows, like, win rates versus these characters.
Mm-hmm.
And it says strong against these characters. And then this one isn't really applicable. It says best synergy, but that's not really applicable to what we're playing here, because usually it's just 1 versus 1. And you can actually click this, and it'll say, and it, like, actually goes into just tons and tons of data of matchups. And it even goes, like, by, like, what role and everything like that. And then you can even, like, layer it by elo, essentially. Like diamond, emerald, platinum, master, all that kind of stuff. And it'll say, and then it actually shows, like, how to play against this champion, power spikes, stuff like that. And this is where, by the way, 40K analysis is probably going to be about 2 or 3 years from now in the future.
We have this, though.
That's what we have. This it's just not. It's just not in the vernacular of the public.
Yeah, but people aren't really, like, taking it in the way that they could.
Yes. But the punditry and the analytics are developing, so we're going to start seeing this stuff.
Yeah.
But this is a big thing I talk about so much. Everyone always wants to ask, what's in the list? What's in the list? What's the list? What do you reserve? What are your secondaries or whatever? And people like to play test and, like, try to, like, and just change those last 200 points of their list over and over and over and over and over again. What you really should be doing is just learning your matchups. That's going to be huge. There's been so many times where your run has been ended because you're like, oh, I didn't know this X unit could do this, or I didn't know X unit could do that. And that was an opportunity that you had to improve your chances of going further in an event, and you missed out on. And if you were just doing that because you were trying to figure out if you should take a unit of 5, like 1 unit of Storm Boys versus 2, and you, like, spent 3 games doing that instead of, like, just learning matchups, Like I don't tell you, man, learn your matchups.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like part of like, you know, going back to what you can do to get better. So how do you optimize the learning from games? How do you assess what content is so basically we're gonna finish this last question. We're gonna move on. So how do you optimize the learning from the games? A big part of it, honestly, is like finding, if you can, really finding an opponent who also wants to learn, and like when you talk, have like a goal. You know, like, hey, we're gonna play this game to completion, which is a good way to, you know, kind of like, you know, simulate a real kind of tournament game. Do we want to workshop it where it's like when I make a game-ending error, we make a note of it and then we pretend it didn't happen and we just like move on like normal? You know, like do we try to like, are we going to try to like speed run it and like get to the kind of like the end game like a little bit faster, that sort of thing? You know, or do we want to do like a re-rack session where you basically you deploy, you play the first 2 rounds, and you kind of like identify the high level like mistakes and then like and optimal play lines, whatever, and then you reset and you guys do it again. And the idea is that you guys do that like 2 or 3 times and then play a full game, you're going to get a really good game because like all those early oopsies where you kind of trip out the gate, you both have gotten rid of those.
Mm-hmm.
And then because neither one of you is making game ending errors right out the gate on deployment or round 1 or round 2, you both get really good opportunities to learn from your own game and then from your opponent. So that's probably the best way. We are almost done. I think we have a handful of questions left. Gabe C, not a question, but I'm challenging Cliff to a triple Rampager mirror match with a bunch of hog emojis. What say you, brother, in all caps? And of course, fucking congrats, Tim. Thanks, Gabe.
I'm down. It has to be on Vassal.
Yeah, I was about to say it has to be on Vassal. I think that's fine. I think like a triple Rampager mirror on Vassal would be like totally fine.
It would be hilarious. Yeah, I don't think we have much to worry about in terms
There's
of
not much.
Like
whenever I look at Vassal, it definitely looks like I haven't seen it in action, but like I've looked at like pictures of it, and it looks like there's not like a lot of verticality to it. But there's not. You're not really getting much verticality in a nightmare match, anyways.
When there is, you just establish with your, you know,
you just
like this can see into that, blah blah
blah. Yeah, I'd totally be down to see that. Griggs, statement of support for Cliff having 3 armies at the bottom of the competitive meta, hoping is your spirit.
Cool. I know it's times like this where I'm like, man, I'm glad I'm like not really out here every week or every other week traveling to GT, because I'd be deeply sad. I wouldn't actually be, because I can go 0-5 and still have a blast and be fine. But it is tough. It's tough, especially given that I thought at the beginning of the edition, Custodians especially, and Knights to a certain extent, really played like fluffily. Like it felt like oh hell yeah, I kick ass in melee combat, like this rules. And then no, that's just over now, and you die immediately.
Brian Jones is doing. He is still like making it work with the Lancer and King.
I know.
He still does work.
Yeah. So that's the thing, right? Tim, you said this earlier, right? Even at the bottom of the barrel, things are so close between folks that like on paper you're like, oh, 42% win rate, like no representation in top 4s, blah blah blah. Like it looks really bad, but like there's still a lot of like opportunity to go and win games based on your gameplay, and as long as you bring a list that's like calibrated given the new context that it's operating in and the strengths and weaknesses therein.
Yeah. So there's certain armies that are not going to attract someone and be like, oh, well, I have this army and I've played it a little bit, you know, but it's going to be a lot of work to get it to the point where like I'm consistently beating good players who are playing better armies than me.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just don't want to put in that investment. Like they'll just wait till it to get better. But then you have people who they've been playing that army while it's good, and then it got hit, and they're still playing it, and they're still making it work, and then it gets hit again. They're like, okay, well now it is harder, but I'm just so deep in the reps of this army, and I know all my matchups so well. It's bad, but it's not so bad where I'm going to give all that up. So they just stick with it. That's kind of what
when the buff comes, and then they're steamrolling everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And all of a sudden they're just back to being superhuman. I think we have like 3. Yeah, it looks like 3 questions left.
Word.
Rickard also gave a statement of solidarity for Cliff and himself having 3 armies at the bottom of the competitive meta. He says we both will not be taking further questions on this topic at this time. Ethan says, how do I prepare for an army I've never played against before, given that, one, I don't know anyone who plays it, two, I don't know the factions, so setting up the table and playing them is not going to be the best data.
It's hard.
It is hard. The
But
best
doable.
thing to do is to try to figure out the common denominators of all the winning lists of that faction. So kind of like go through all the undefeated lists, the winning list, the X1 list, and really make a note of what right now, right now we're in Index Hammer, everyone only has one detachment for the most part. It's pretty simple, but like in the future, make a note of like what the detachments that are showing up over and over and over again. Like what detachments is everyone bringing? What units is everyone bringing? And then when you figure out the core of all the successful lists for those factions, go deep dive the data sheets for the characters, the units. Go back and look at the army rule. Go back and look at the detachment rule. Look at all the stratagems. Look at all the enhancements, and try to kind of reverse engineer the synergy, and then try to figure out like once you find that synergy, it'll kind of like jump out the page at you like what the army is trying to do. And even though you won't see that in practice, when you pair into that opponent and you're kind of doing that little like song and dance where it's kind of like, oh, walk me through your army, what does it do, blah blah blah, and then they announce their battle formations, their reserves, you see them deploy, you see what units they deploy last.
Mhm.
At that point, with the studying you've done and then the context clues that you're getting from them walking through your army, the battle formations, the reserves, their secondaries, and their deployment, you can piece together about 95% of the puzzle. And so you may not, when that big like wombo combo is coming or when that mobility thing is coming or whatever, you might not know the math off your head. Like when this unit lands and when it connects, does it kill X of unit Y or does it kill, two like twice that or half of that or whatever? You may not know the exact number, but you kind of like you at least know it's coming, and you're not just getting completely blindsided and dropped by this by this um by this like combo or this move or whatever. So that's huge. That would be my recommendation, is really just find the unifying common thread, and once you find that, just look through the units, the data sheets, and the enhancements, and like find that common synergy that all the winning lists are trying to like key off of and use, and then go into your game knowing that, and just piece it all together. From Demetrius to Peasy, Atlanta was a lion's den. What would you say to those people who didn't perform as well as they thought they might have? Is it good to take a break and then come back refreshed, or keep pushing and don't get stagnant? I've been trying to avoid reading any comments, reviews on the early AdMech previews, which I don't think are pretty solid so far. Why do you think we have such a sky is falling mentality as a community when it comes to these army rules, data slates, etc.?
The internet's a terrible place and it's an echo chamber, and we should all spend less time on it.
Yeah, basically that's it. It's an echo chamber. Facebook is basically a dead platform. Just people haven't realized it yet. So you're going to get a certain vibe when you're on Facebook. Reddit, the way it is designed, every single thread or section or page has like a certain tone, and it's usually by who gets in there first and sets the overall kind of like narrative. And anyone who deviates from that, it like will get like downvoted, and their comments will get pushed down. And it's like once you hit that critical mass of upvotes or downvotes, then everyone kind of hops on because no one wants to be the guy that breaks ranks and gets hammered down. So it's like they say it's not supposed to, and everyone posts like Reddit, which is a dumb word, but really it's like the way the interface is designed, it creates an echo chamber.
Yeah.
And there's no vetting of experience or merit when you're in there. So it could just be some random guy who talks the words good, and he got there first, and so people are like, "Oh, this guy sounds like he knows what he's talking about." So they just push him up, and then someone comes in and is like, "Well, actually, I played this, and no, and people are like, "Oh, I don't like that," boop, and they push him down. And it always takes more.
I don't like that.
It always takes more effort to fight misinformation than it does to create it. And so a
Yeah.
lot of people just don't even bother. And so you just end up having like a race. A lot of time, if you're lucky, sometimes there's good information, but for the most part, it's usually a race to the bottom. And by the time you know enough to identify that, you don't actually have a reason to be there in the first place because you now know enough to just you don't have to go to Reddit.
It's not either anymore.
So you just kind of end up just having a floating turd soup where it's just a race to the bottom of information and trolling, and it's just totally not worth it. So I'd say that's probably why.
It's also just more, it's challenging. Like 40K is pretty complex, and it's challenging to see why. It is more challenging to see immediately why something might be good, independent of context, right?
Yes.
Like, and you just need the other pieces to be able to fully evaluate something. It's really easy to jump to a conclusion that a given stratagem, data sheet, enhancement, etc., is not good because you're missing what makes it in fact usable and like quite good in regular gameplay.
Yep. Yeah, there's been a lot of times where I've been in the conversation or in the room or something like that, and new rules getting passed around, and someone whose opinion I respect a lot is like, "Oh yeah, this looks really good. This sounds really good." But in a different army, that same exact rule, they're like, "Yeah, this doesn't look that good," and it's kind of like, well, they're the same rule. Why does it look good here and not good here? But then you layer in the additional context, and all of a sudden, you're like, "Oh yeah, this is good in a specific scenario that's never going to happen or never going to come up." Or it creates this huge push pull with the way the rest of the army wants to create. Whereas this one, it's very easy to set up. And it's going to be something you're going to be doing anyhow. So you don't have to like do anything weird, or you don't have to give up anything to make it happen. So the context is everything. And then sometimes like something looks good and then you throw it on the table and it just doesn't quite pan
Right.
out.
Oh.
You're like, that was kind of weird. Let's try it again. And you played like a second game, and you're like, yeah, that just did not play out the way I thought it was going to. It was just not impactful at all, and you just cut it.
Yeah.
You don't look at it again.
Oh wait, there's the first part of that question though about the players that went and didn't do as well as they thought they would.
Oh yeah. I want to say I think I'm gonna let you lead with that one, Cliff. Do you have any insights on that one?
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't
like.
There's there's no universe in which I would be able to have joined the ranks of the players going there. But like, I can't imagine, like, I've been in situations where like thought I was good at a thing, showed up to the real pool and was like, oh wait, no, there's levels. I see now. And I've always taken that as a challenge to like get better at what I'm doing, but also, accept with humility that like, oh yeah, there's people out there that are just like working harder than I am, and it is what it is. And it's important to be able to accept that and just like, run your own race. Like, how well can I do given the constraints that I've got, given my own operating context, and just push towards success in that way. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely important to identify the time, or like sometimes you just need to decompress. And if you can identify that and you can feel it, like do it. Like if you've been, because even when you play against someone who's better than you, and playing against people who are better than you and kind of bouncing off them and losing to them, like it's probably the best way to learn. But even when it was probably going to happen, like sometimes like when you play someone who's better than you and they're going to beat you, but they're so much better than you and they beat you so freaking badly that it just felt like you couldn't do nothing. That still kind of like hits you on like a deep level, and it'll make you kind of question a lot of things and make you not want to play for a little bit. And it's nothing against that person, like, and they might have been perfectly pleasant and like really helpful in teaching, but like you just got beaten so freaking soundly where you're just kind of like, should I just uninstall this game? Like, should I just play yeah, like, should I just pack it up? And usually that goes away after about a half a week to a week. And then especially if you like just like walk away for like a half a week or week, and then like go play like an RTT or something like that, and like play against like mortals again, and and you'll get a combination. You'll get some blowouts, and then you'll also get like some wins that were like attainable, but like you might have let them slip through your fingers, but you saw the light, or you'll get some wins where you won, but just barely, but it was like a really good, like equal level fight or whatever, stuff like that, And so that's usually a lot of times what will happen to an RTT is like you go to an RTT, there'll be some guy who just like doesn't know like anything that's going on, and like you don't crush him, but you beat him pretty soundly, and the outcome was never in question. And then you'll win a game, but you had to work for it, and you'll lose a game barely, but you don't feel bad about losing because you both had to work for it. And that's a really good way to kind of like get your confidence back up, like after just getting absolutely taken to the cleaners by like these like elite level players.
Yeah.
Because it is very good to play against like those really 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 good people. That's how you improve. But like you also got to take care of your mental health a little bit too. You can't just very few people can just go in there and just get ragdolled by elite level players over and over and over and over and over again, and then that's all they do. Those people are psychopaths, and they come out killers. But very few people can do that. So definitely take care of yourself, man. Cliff, closing thoughts or anything?
Nah, man, it's been too long. This was great.
Yeah.
Congrats on the win.
Thank you, man.
So cool. And like I feel like it's just like a living testament to the ongoing work of X1 as a team. Like you can get better. It does take work. There is a path there, and like it'll happen as long as you stick to it. It's great.
Yeah, it doesn't happen overnight, but it kind of feels good to break through. So on to bigger, better things. Kind of excited. Warzone Atlanta is next week, and like I said, this event was practice for that. Now, granted, this was just off the back of a recent spike because this event, but we're speaking of prep work. It's myself and 4 other people from Miami Dice are going up to Warzone Atlanta.
Fun.
And once the ELO updated today, we actually went through and we pulled every single name on the roster for Warzone Atlanta, and then we pulled their names, we pulled up their meta, and I created a second spreadsheet that's only internal to my team, and everyone that's registered Warzone Atlanta with their elos, and then with their whatever it shows as their main faction on the elo sheet, and then we ordered it by elo number, and I think I'm number 2 up there, so that feels kind of cool.
Yeah.
But basically that gave us, because there's a lot of names we don't recognize, but the elo is showing that they're like up there in the 16. Most of them. There's quite a few people that are like the upper 1600s, almost 17, which is like, that's like someone who's knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
But it's good because once lists are live, instead of having to look through every single list or just rely on name recognition, now we actually have some sort of like data that shows this person is good or this person is competent, and we know which lists to look at, which lists we could probably just safely just figure it out when we get to the table.
Yeah.
So when lists go live for Warzone Atlanta, we're going to identify like those 10 or so players that we think are going to be like threats or whatever. And we're actually going to pull up the list, and we're going to spend like the couple of days leading up to Warzone Atlanta, and we're going to try to get games into each other running these people's lists, so that way we don't get surprised by it, especially if we see a list that we don't like know what it does or looks different, something like that.
Love it. So, doing the work.
But instead of like trying to play test and figure out like the last 200 points of our list or something like that, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to figure out who's the best players up there in Atlanta by elo, and then that we're just waiting for lists to go live. As soon as lists are live, we're dissecting their lists, and then the idea is that the 5 of us are going to be no surprises when we pair into the good players in Atlanta.
That's it.
And hopefully the work shows through.
Advantages of a good team culture, advantages of having access to these resources and using them. It's out there, guys. It's all free.
Cool.
Just gotta go and use it.
All right, man. Well, it was good talking to you, Cliff. Viewers, everyone, hope you all have a good Thanksgiving. If you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, because you may be outside the U.S., I know we have a lot of Australians and Kiwis that listen to us our time slot. Hope you guys have a good weekend and play some good events. Spend some time with your family, even though it's not Thanksgiving. Looking forward to 2 weeks talking about Atlanta and then talking about all the good food that we ate for Turkey Day.
Yeah.
And we'll see you all then, and we'll see you guys in the Discord.
Peace, y'all.
Peace.